The great Anubis.
Anubis is the gatekeeper to the underworld.
Yep, god of the underworld.
Yeah.
He is the guy on the boat that
Okay.
takes people. Actually, he might not be the guy on the boat. He's not in too many stories or like hieroglyphs. He only shows up every now and then, but it's always around like mummification, death, those kind of things.
Okay. I'm so fascinated with like mythos anymore. I was as a child, just for the story sense and like, I don't know, the magic of it. And now it's taken a totally different feel where I'm like starting to recognize truth in some of the mythos, and that it's like ancient stories trying to be passed down to us in such a way to like distill wisdom in some way. Like these are some things to pay attention to, but it can be really hard for me still to interpret it well. And I know that there's some real masters out there who have done brilliant interpretations, but it still comes back to the individual. Like I know how it feels like when something connects for me, like almost like that coming back to Jesus moment and realizing that like Jesus isn't this abstract figure who just like got nailed to the cross for your sins, but instead is like a representation of the actual conscience and moral direction that lives inside of you. And it's just like, oh, like just weird reframes that occur as you like grow up, essentially.
The stories take on like a deeper meaning.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's kind of what was it I was thinking about? Oh, the Greek philosophies, or like the Greek gods, because they would always have gods that they would attribute to different like emotions. And that was like my first like whole epiphany into this, where it was like, oh, it was like they're trying to personify an emotion. I don't know if they actually believe that there's these gods fighting in the world, but it's like these energies actually have control over us as humans.
Yeah, and that's exactly what like I'm getting to, in that sense of like how it connects as you get older. You realize that like when anger washes over you, like it is its own energy, and everyone has anger within them that just takes over them at some point. And like you could attribute, and we're just using this word anger, there could be a variety of words that are much more like nuanced or specific towards that feeling, but that feeling is essentially an energy or an entity that exists in our world. Now it's not this like concrete, I cannot touch it, and yet it is here. And we navigate this space, and we see these emotions, we see these feelings, these ideas come into conflict or come into unison, whatever they are. And we might describe them as a god, if you will. We might describe them as something greater than ourselves, because they can take control of us, and they have definitely taken control of large swaths of people and shaped history as we know it.
Yeah, when you get possessed by an idea.
Yeah.
No shortage of leaders or individuals who have gone through that path. Also, by the way, I'm just thinking of this. If you want to adjust your headphone volume, you can do so with this thing. With this thing right here. Like this will be yours all the way over here, and then this is kind of mine, so I can like increase the sound. Yeah, just so you're aware.
Let me just try it.
So you have some editing.
This is just my normal voice speaking right now. This is getting loud. I don't like it that loud. I think I like it right this place. Right. That's a good one. Cool. Yeah, this is good for me.
But also make sure you're kind of like about this far from the mic too.
Okay.
Cool.
Am I pretty good right here?
Yeah.
Feel free to call me
a little bit closer.
Okay.
Just because it's real nice and sensitive.
Yeah.
Yeah. Get in there. It's going to get in your personal space a little bit.
I'm going to get a little intimate with
it. Yeah. It's your mic right now.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah. Become one with the mic.
All right.
Merge your consciousness with the mic.
Me and you, baby.
Yeah. Isn't it kind of cool?
Yeah.
Kind of just be a little like, oh, like I can get into this.
Hey there.
Yeah.
It's so soft. I wasn't expecting it.
Dude, especially when you hear yourself in your own head.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a weird feeling. Oh, shit, dude. Yeah, man. The whole idea just of gods in general is a very fascinating one. And I always think I feel like I bring it back always to like, it's a hierarchy. Like there's always gods that are higher. And so it's like, what are you aiming towards? And I find this, and you were kind of alluding to it there when you started talking about like this emergence of
You
The
can touch my feet
physical.
with your feet.
Okay, cool.
It's okay.
I got a little
Yeah.
nervous.
Yeah, it's okay.
There you go.
We'll find
Yeah.
it. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, there's a spot somewhere. This is the first one, dude.
Yeah.
We'll get back to the gods in a second, but dude, this is exciting. This is the first like in-house,
Yeah.
real setup podcast. I've done 2 before where it was in person, but this is the first one where it feels like, oh, we got 3 cameras, we got 2 mics.
This feels great. I'm so happy to be doing this in person too. It's just I have much better conversations in person. Essentially, like it's okay over Zoom, but I have not been a big fan over the last 3 or 4 years for a variety of reasons. But one of them just like it is not the same. It is not the same when you cannot feel someone else's presence that you're talking to.
Yeah, and even I think there's a micro delay. Sometimes I get into delays where it'll be like from like a half second to a second, which is
it's forever.
Huge. But on the corollary, it's been super helpful for me to kind of gauge my listening ability as opposed to interrupting or adding words. It's like just sit back and listen. Let him go. There's a little bit of pause after they're done talking. There's a little bit of pause.
Yeah, great reframe.
Yeah,
it is a long time, right? Even just a second, but actually. Sometimes it's nice just to take a moment.
And let things settle.
Take a breath. And let things penetrate, if you will. You know, let an idea sink for a second.
Down into that psyche.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what were we talking about with the gods?
Just how different emotions, different ideas have certain hierarchy.
Oh, the material world.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because that's I feel like that's such a bridge that needs to, maybe it doesn't need to get crossed, but it needs to at least be addressed where you have material scientists who then are like, oh, this is a physical thing. If I can't observe it with my 5 senses, then it doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like the logical mind implements that, but the way we move throughout this world doesn't exist. Like we don't act like this is the only physical thing that exists. We act as if there's a dimension, whether that's time, whether that's these, taking hallucinogenics type deal. But we like intuitively act as if there's a bigger picture going on, and feels like material science just hasn't caught up with that.
Mm-hmm. And I think some people are scratching the surface of it, but yeah, what we like hold as a higher form of truth often in science is what we can measure, what we can quantify. And a lot of the world that we live in, you can't do that. And that doesn't make it any less real or make it any less impactful. We're all dealing and living in a world of emotions and ideas, and some things get way out of hand sometimes that can't be like quantified, if you will, like the mental health decline in our society, and someone like struggling to recognize truth from fiction and the illusions in our head. Like, how do you take a person and show them like something that is true? They won't believe it because everything is shaped by your perspective. You believe what you choose to believe, and that can't be quantified in a way.
And I think that's probably an antithesis, especially I think of our generation, which I would postulate is probably more empathetic than past generations of recent history. And where this comes into truth is like the idea of objective truth versus subjective truth.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're seeing that play out on the political, on the sociological landscape of, the gendered war, if you will, where it's like, okay, this is their truth, but at what level does it become this, I need to accept your truth versus it being an ultimate truth that we all can agree upon?
Yeah. Yeah, totally. We have to have a shared reality in order to have a shared society. In order to make civilization work, we have to agree upon certain things. And it seems like certain fundamental aspects of what we all agree upon are being questioned right now. And I don't think people quite realize how detrimental that is. Like when you start to shake the very bedrock of how we perceive reality and how even a child, comes equipped to perceive reality, like that is going to really fuck us up. And yeah, it's like everyone has their truth that they believe, but we need to come to an agreement. We have in the past. That's what like our Constitution is, for example, what our Bill of Rights is. It's like we've come to an agreement. People who really thought about something came to an agreement to say, we need to be able to have difficult speech with one another and be able to have discourse even when it's really uncomfortable. And that is so important for us to arrive at an idea of truth. Because I don't know that there is like, I don't know that we'll ever have this concrete, that's not what truth is. It's not that we will find this thing of truth, but it's like aiming towards truth, aiming towards something that's real. You know, you go outside, you feel the wind, you feel the temperature. That is true. But if you're in your head all the time and you have lost connection with like your intuition, you're starting to believe things just based on what you're hearing, what you're taking in and consuming all the time. And then what is truth to you? You don't even know anymore. And you're now caught in this idea or ideology.
It sounds like even somebody else's truth.
Mm-hmm. And you might not know that. You know, it's difficult. I know pretty much every year that passes, I become more aware of things that I wasn't aware of. And like, you know, sometimes it's just like a lot of shortcomings because I beat myself up all the time. But a lot of times it's very helpful too. It's like, oh man, I can stand up for myself. I can create the world that I want to live in. I can put the work in and change in such a way that I might not have believed I could. You know, I'm not a slave to my genetics, if you will. Everything that I do has an influence on the gene expression. And had I not learned that from experience, had I not opened myself up to reading a variety of things and listening to such a range of people, I might not have like come to that perspective. And I might have imagined my entire life that I am a slave to my genetics. And it's like, that's not helpful. That's not growing. That's just stagnancy. I'm being stuck. And I would live a much poorer life as a result of that and not feel powerful.
Yeah, something that was in there that I feel like I heard you say on the other podcast is Clayton Moves.
Yeah, Clayton Law, but his
Law.
online presence, Clayton Moves.
Okay.
Make Moves.
Make Moves. Okay, is that the podcast? I want to make sure I get it right.
Make Moves podcast.
Make Moves podcast. Yeah, so that the listeners can check out another podcast. Something that you kind of were just answering in that, something that you said in that answer that I picked up from the one podcast I listened to you, is this idea of awareness isn't like a binary thing. It's not like I am aware or I'm not aware, which is something that I always felt like I was caught in, right? Back in my college days, you know, getting into conspiracy theories and, you know, the evils of the government, you know, I've been like, oh, I'm aware. I'm fucking aware. I know what's going on. You guys don't know what's going on. I know what's going on. But now, you know, as the last probably 5, 6, 7 years have unfolded, there's new layers of awareness that keep unlocking my awareness of my body, of my soul, of, you know, the one source consciousness, God. It's like awareness isn't a binary thing. It's a range. It's a hierarchy, if you will.
Yeah. Patanjali from like the Yoga Sutras would say that awareness is this underlying, it's essentially the eye of God. It's the underlying, consciousness isn't the right word because awareness and consciousness are actually different. But it's just there. It's like when you're meditating, for example, and you're like catching yourself thinking and you're like, oh wait, well, who's catching the thinker? Another thinker. And you keep going like level back, like and catching yourself thinking. And ultimately it arrives at this like, well, wait, who is this witness? What is the observer? And that, I think, is awareness, this underlying presence of something that we can't perceive. And that, I think that is awareness. And so, yeah, it doesn't make sense for it to be a binary thing. And it's just always there. And it's always something that we can expand into to learn more and more. Because, yeah, we have no fucking idea what's going on. And I think the longer that we're here, the more we will realize that we know less than we thought before. And yet at the same time, paradoxically, we'll know more.
Mm.
And it's like weird to say that out loud, but yeah, I completely agree. Where I thought too, for a time, we're like, oh, I know what's happening, like, well, I'm gonna take, I know now I need to take ownership of my life and like keep myself in good physical health. And I'd be reading like trusted sources to keep myself healthy, and you come to find out, years later that like those trusted sources are just controlled by institutions and entities that actually don't give a fuck about your health. And it can really like shake you. It's hard. It's hard coming into more and more awareness. And I understand why people don't. I understand why a large swath of the population has continued to bury their heads further into the sand, because shit's scary.
It shakes you. Like you were saying earlier, it shakes you to your core.
Yeah.
It shakes your truth to your core. So what, you kind of said it at the beginning of that answer. What is the difference then between awareness and consciousness?
I'm so not like an expert really
What's your opinion?
in anything. I think consciousness is something within us, and awareness is, and like words are tough, right? Because we say like I'm aware of something, and me saying I'm aware of something isn't what I mean by awareness. There's like a capital A awareness that underlies reality, that is the mind of God, if you will. It is the perception of God, which we can tap into. And I think consciousness is the divine spark, if you will, that lives within us at the cellular level, that is keeping us alive and lets us tap into that mind of God. And there's like this mirroring effect where like there's awareness underlying it all, and then there's consciousness and us in this realm, this world, and we can kind of become aware with our consciousness, and we like almost like looking at a mirror, use that awareness to see and perceive more and more. And I don't know if that's a great answer, but that's sort of where I'm at right now. And I'm sure that'll evolve in the next year, 5-10 years.
Oh, it's an interesting one. I'm picking it up as consciousness is the tool that we're able to use to penetrate awareness.
Mm-hmm. I like that. Yeah.
It's an interesting way to look at it, because I don't know what the difference is.
Mm-hmm. And that, I think that's really well said too, because that's like you become more conscious as you grow, and you see people becoming less conscious too sometimes.
With deeper awareness, you become more conscious.
You can tap into more awareness by becoming more conscious, if you will, from the perspective that I just described, at least. But yeah, I think we're saying the same thing, but you can get caught in the nomenclature.
Well, but it's a good, I think it's an important conversation, because the way I see it, and there's many words that are very similar to this, is that if you have two words, they serve two different purposes. We didn't create another word just for funsies. So there has to be a difference between these two that exists, but we're just like slightly missing something about it, or we're just not actively aware of what that thing is.
Yeah.
That's a trippy one, man.
Yeah, words are really interesting. You use things in such like a colloquial manner sometimes, where things are interchangeable, but actually at their core they are much different. And I have found, at least, I learn much more, and my perspective changes as I dive into like just a word, whether it be like the etymology of a word and trying to figure out where it comes from, like through time, and what the underlying like meanings were of a word. And it can become really revealing, because we really take words for granted in a big way. Like we really take the fact that we can speak in language, but like right now we're performing magic. Just right in this moment, we're performing magic. I'm creating vibration inside my body that harmonizes into some shape or sound that you are able to receive, understand, and formulate a concept in your mind based on the vibrations that I am currently putting out. That's magic. I'm shaping reality with my words. And so those words are essentially spells.
Yeah.
Each word has its own like intention and meaning, and they come together into these like spells where we are capable of coming to an understanding. And that can be beautiful, but it can also be scary because they can be used against us.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's probably where free will kind of comes into play. But as you were talking there, I kind of brought up consciousness and the etymology of consciousness and awareness, because I feel like this is actually probably a pretty important thing. The first thing I noticed is the trends here, because so what we're looking at, guys, are trend lines of how often they were used, and it dates back to 1800. So in 1800, consciousness was pretty low. It peaked around 1880. Took a dive until 1940, and now it's been on this surge, just this climb until 2019. Whereas awareness, it was never used. What are they using to do this? Adapted from books. Oh, so they're pulling all these words from books, it looks like.
Okay, so how much they were used, like through literature or something?
Yeah, bring your
yeah.
mic with you. Yeah, remember, get intimate with it.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry, I move around. I'll leave my hand on you, baby.
But what's awareness? It's like zero in 1800, and then it doesn't start really making it doesn't come alive really until 1900. But then since then, it's been this like steady graph that's increasing through 2019. So let's look at this. So let's start with aware. Middle English aware from late Old English gruer, which meant watchful or vigilant. From Proto-Germanic garwars. I'm not German.
Mm-hmm.
But it has all these different things. And to be wary, to be cautious, to perceive or watch out for.
Mm.
Interesting. So aware is like a little bit more like, okay, be watchful, be vigilant, be proactive.
And so just to like make things so much more confusing, just for funsies real quick, this is also like us looking at an etymology, for this aware is going back towards Middle English or even Germanic, whereas like awareness is the interpretation, like the word awareness is an interpretation from like a Sanskrit word that goes back thousands of years. And I don't remember off the top like what that Sanskrit word is, but that would almost be what like would be getting into the root of what we were just talking about in terms of awareness much more. Whereas this aware is like the more, maybe a more commonly like you need to be aware of your surroundings because there is danger afoot.
That's a good point.
Versus like awareness of like the senses within you and, around you.
Yeah. So in Sanskrit's the oldest language, right? Oldest living language?
I'm not sure.
Oh, we got a laptop here.
Yeah. There's
the oldest living language because they're alive. What is the oldest language? Language is an essential part of human communication. Oh, no kidding. Allowing people to express ideas. Among them, okay, about 7,151 languages are spoken in the world as of 2022.
Wow.
Among them, only 23 languages account for more than half of the world's population. A third of total languages spoken are used and are said to be endangered. It's the 80-20 principle right there for you. The oldest language to be spoken was the Proto-Human language, which is said to be the predecessor to all languages of the world, according to Wordium Daily. It is a hypothetical language. Okay, that doesn't make sense. Susceptible to historical linguistic analysis. Come on, give us something concrete. The Dravidian language has speakers back to the 8th century CE. Whoa. Dead language, first language. The oldest living languages, okay, that are spoken today according to Mondley. Sanskrit would be the oldest at 3,500 years, with a close second being Greek at 3,400 years. Sanskrit feels like it's older than 3,500 years.
Yeah, I don't know that we really know fucking shit.
That's fair
to be
too.
honest. Like,
All right, well, let's go back to awareness. We're going down a weird rabbit hole. All right, so awareness in Sanskrit's vijnana,
okay.
the state of level of consciousness where sense data can be confirmed by an observer.
So that's like, to me, that's an important concept real quick, because that's getting us to like first principles, like what is objective reality, to a rational observer, like the state or level of consciousness where sense data can be confirmed by an observer. You and I can both sit here and we can be totally different people with totally different ideas of the world, and yet we can both confirm that there is a table in front of us. Now, we might not both be able to confirm what the vibe in the room is. We're going to have some different perspectives of that. That's subjective, but this awareness,
Wow.
can bring us to a shared reality.
I'm even thinking about it in terms of like working with like a coach or a guru. You'll do that because they can see things that you're not seeing about your life. They can point out little things or issues that are going on.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's this making me think of, is like, you're not aware of those issues, but they're aware because they've either been there, they've gotten past it. So based on their sense data, they're at a higher state or level of consciousness in a specific realm, whether it's business, money, relationships. And so their sense data, the information they're taking in based on your situation, they confirm what that they're observing, and then they relay that back to you. But since you're not aware enough to see that, you can't see it. You're not aware of it. So they're bringing that into your awareness, and then it's up to you if you want to be confirmed to it or if you're agreeant. That's fascinating.
Yeah, that's a beautiful like sales pitch essentially for a coach. And I think the real reason why working with someone, whether it be a therapist or a coach or just having a good friend that will actually speak truth to you, is just paramount to live a good life. Because I'm not aware of some things that could make my life better in the way that I maybe am conducting myself. And someone else might be able to relatively quickly see that and help me level up my life in much shorter time frame than I might figure out myself. Because someone can come and they can like work with you for a little while. I work with a lot of people in the movement space, for example, and people just unfortunately move terribly in our current society, mostly because we're wearing shoes that don't fit and such. It's just affecting you all the way up the chain. So it's like, it's fucking easy to see now, like the way that people walk and how their ankles collapse and how it's affecting their knees and their back. And it's like, man, if you can open someone's eyes to that and help them feel that within themselves, then they start to have that awareness. And unless they choose to put their head deep back into the sand, they're going to keep that awareness. That's theirs now. They can choose what to do with it. So they can start to wear better footwear, for example, or start to strengthen their feet, their ankles, their knees, their hips, their back. And over a relatively short time frame, like 1 year, they can dramatically improve the way that they feel in their life.
All just by becoming aware
and
having someone to show that data, show them that sense data. All right. So what's interesting about this word is that in the definition is consciousness.
Yeah, right. And it goes,
You know what they say about circular dependencies.
Yeah.
All right, but let's check out what does it mean to be conscious? So it's from 1600. Knowing or privy to is poetic, from Latin conscientious, knowing or aware. Oh my gosh. Oh, we gotta love these circular definitions. Is that your phone?
So sorry.
Bro, party foul, dude. It's alright, I've done it before too. Let's look up the Sanskrit for consciousness. What is the Sanskrit for consciousness? Chaitanya. Chaitanya. Am I saying that right?
Probably not.
Probably not. I apologize to all my Hindu or Sanskrit speakers out there. Let's look at, let's use the same source. Consciousness. Wait. It's the same word.
Yeah.
Vijnana?
It shouldn't be.
It should not be.
They are different.
then maybe it is Chaitanya. Let me see if let's use this translator and then go back the opposite direction.
Hmm.
Switch it.
I think it could be interesting to almost just search like Patanjali, consciousness versus awareness.
Patanjali.
Oh, Patanjali. See, I'm fucking that up.
It's all right. I'm pretty sure it's Patanjali. Consciousness versus awareness. But wait, I feel like I want to read this Wikipedia page.
Yeah, for sure. My bad, Patanjali.
No, you're good. That's the thing. That's how you spell it or pronounce it. So Chaitanya in Sanskrit, probably pronouncing it wrong, refers variously to awareness, consciousness, conscious self, intelligence, or pure consciousness. It can also mean energy or enthusiasm. So that doesn't really help much. What about chit? Chit is a Sanskrit word meaning consciousness. It is a core principle in all ancient spiritual traditions originating from the Indian subcontinent, including Hinduism, Sikhism, and Jainism.
And this is where it can become challenging because, we're using English terminology here with consciousness, and yet those two words, chit and I don't remember how to say the other one.
Chaitanya.
Definitely different and would have different meaning to someone who spoke that language and understood that language.
Right.
It'd be like in the same way that like we say the word snow for any type of snow, but someone who lives in a very cold climate that grows up around different types of snow is going to have a lot of different words for different types of snow, and those matter. And they can influence your survival even.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, it's okay. Yeah.
I think in the Amazon, I gotta look this up. Amazon group, they have like 8 different words for the color green.
Sure, right? Because, it's not just green.
Right. And then what's interesting about this too is it also influences your perception within that environment.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're like, oh, it was green.
Words matter. They're shaping your actual perspective.
Yeah, literally shapes your perspective of the world. I had this fascinating conversation that even went into how our calendar and our timing shapes our entire perspective of the world. How we decided, it was probably, how many years ago would it have been? A couple thousand years ago, when they decided to actually break down the calendar in terms of how frequently we rotated around the sun. Before that, I think it was like the Indians at least had this perspective, which is they measured it based on the moon. And so what happened was we actually started breaking down time relative to space that we were covering. So just by doing that, I think it was called like the 1260 frequency, universal frequency, and then there's like another one that we're kind of shifting into. It's a long thing. I need to get this girl on the podcast. I actually just emailed her today. But the point is, though, is that now we're breaking down our perception of time to space. So like we've made this mental connection with space that inherently when we say time, we're talking about the amount of space that it takes us to move around the sun, which completely distorts, well, it doesn't distort it, but it puts us in this like conscious perspective that's like different than just what could be alternative.
Yeah, it creates a filter through which we now live and see that it's difficult then to see outside of that filter. Whereas maybe if we didn't keep track of years, but instead kept track of like moon cycles, months, if you will, we would have a totally different perspective of our lives. Would our lives feel longer? I don't know. I don't know how that filter is changing my perspective because I'm living in it right now. I would need someone almost outside of that filter to come and make me aware of it. But that goes back to like, we can't see the night sky very well anymore because most of us live in cities with just enormous light pollution. But like beyond the lunar cycles, beyond the solar cycles, it's like there's this even greater cycle of the way that the constellations move through the heavens, the way that the shapes of the stars, the different stars that are apparent throughout the seasons and across enormous lengths of time change. And humans through history have kept track of that. And it's very significant, actually. There's some really crazy events that line up through time at kind of specific constellation cycles. This great year, if you will. I forget, is it like around 25,000 years measured, the way that we measure years is like this great year where we'll have moved through all of the different like horoscopic constellations.
I'm looking it up right now.
Yeah, and so like
About 25,800 years.
yeah.
Yeah, and I think there's even a crazier thing here with like the Younger Dryas
Yeah.
and Göbekli Tepe.
Mm-hmm.
You're aware of like that
Mm-hmm.
finding on the pillar that they have. So for those who don't know, let me take a step back.
Mm-hmm.
Göbekli Tepe was found in Turkey, somewhere in the
Mm-hmm.
Middle East.
Yeah, Turkey.
And what they found was this monumental structure, kind of structure like a city almost, that was completely buried. So they buried it themselves for whatever reason. We don't know. Here's my hypothesis: is on one of the pillars, they have this astrological alignment of the sky, like where like there's this bird and then the scorpion and all this stuff. I don't know all the specifics, but and where that astrological event would have occurred or been in the sky relative to this was the exact same time as the Younger Dryas. My intuition's telling me is that they knew whenever this cataclysm was going to happen. That's why they filled this thing in, to preserve it for a future generation, to be like, hey, whenever this constellation gets to here in the sky, there's going to be a cataclysm.
Yeah,
Maybe
out.
You guys should know this in the future. So that's why in my opinion, of course, is that they buried it for that reason.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. I've been arriving at that too. Like peoples of old have tried to hand down information to, you know, future generations to help them survive and to be aware of things that we might not be aware of, because they've recognized at frequent intervals some bad shit has occurred. And yeah, you know, the Younger Dryas is a perfect example of that. You know, all of a sudden you see this like explosion of technology. And Göbekli Tepe is such an interesting example because, you know, what we commonly consider history, that's a time when we're supposed to still be basically cavemen. You know, this like greater than 10,000 years ago, you know, we recognize in modern archaeology, like Sumeria as the birthplace of civilization, which is like what, like 5,000 or 6,000 years ago,
something like that.
And then just randomly, like almost twice as long ago, there's just this enormous megalithic structure that appears to have been deliberately buried. And it's like, how the fuck did they even make it? How the fuck did they bury it? And how did they know how to do that? And it just like, it indicates such a greater amount of knowledge than we ever could have conceived as possible at that time. And it's just like, oh man, we don't know much. You know, it's very revealing.
Yeah. And I feel like there has to be this level of being able to tap into those higher states of consciousness that we're talking about, where you have access to more information than what we can perceive at this time. Like, I think I was just watching on Ancient Aliens. It was actually just before you got here. We're starting to develop, I guess, like nanobot technology, where like we can put nanobots into our bloodstream, and they're like 250 atoms long. That's how small they are. And then they can like direct them to like heal and to fix stuff, right? And it got to this point where they're like, you know, their perception shift of it is, oh, well, if we're creating this and we have these biblical figures who are living to be 900 years old, then they must have had nanotech technology. And our perception isn't to think that maybe they had something else. It's to take our current understanding of the world and then mirror it onto theirs. Oh, we're figuring out nanotech. Oh, we're figuring out this new wave of technology. They must have had that too. It's not like, oh, they had a different way of seeing the world. It's not like, oh, they were tapped into a higher level of consciousness where they understood how to slow down their heart rate, how to be more relaxed, how to pull energy from, you know, a greater ether that exists right here between us, but we can't see it. And so I find it so fascinating how it's like, it's kind of that similar thing. Is like, how do we actually know what happened? And then you want to add another layer to it. Language, like we're just saying. The oldest language we just found was 3,500 BC, which would be about 6,000 years ago. The Younger Dryas happened 12,000 years ago. So how do you communicate something to someone in the future and you don't know what language they're going to be using?
Symbols.
That's the only thing you can do.
Yeah. And it seems somewhat rudimentary. You know, we see these like hieroglyphics and such. We're like, oh, they just drew something weird. You know, this very like immature understanding of it.
These cavemen.
Whereas it's like, oh no, actually, symbols hold truth across time. And it's up to us to try to figure out the deeper meanings within them.
That kind of comes back to our meta truth of the things that stay true no matter what our subjective opinion is of them.
Mm.
And just this ever going process to try to find them or preserve them, or
Yeah.
because in 10,000 years, the stars are going to still be there.
Mm-hmm.
Hypothetically, assuming, I don't know, there's maybe quite a few assumptions underneath that, but
I think they will be.
It's like the best thing we have. Yeah.
Yeah. I think this planet will still be here. It'll be just fine. I hope we are too, but you know, if not, I think in some way, shape, or form, we actually still will just be fine.
Yeah.
My faith almost demands that I believe that, but in a good way, not in like a overbearing way. Just believe in like this underlying goodness. And I'm gonna die. I'm gonna be in pain. I'm gonna suffer, but like that's okay. This life is so beautiful. Like it's such a blessing to be able to be here right now.
How did you come to that?
I don't even know. I guess going through a lot of pain, like through my life, and coming out the other side of it, and like things being good. It was such an example of like the cyclical nature of things. Like pain is necessary, suffering is necessary. Now there's a lot of unnecessary suffering. I'm trying to root it out through like Tough Club, for example. But a lot of suffering is just inherent in living, and it is necessary. But that's okay, because unless I shy away from it and curl up into a little ball and demand that daddy protect me, I actually am very powerful and can confront it head on. And in that willingness to take it head on, it becomes less. I transcend it. And then everything just feels so good.
So do you feel like you actively seek out pain and suffering?
Yeah, to a big degree. Not like in a sadistic way, or there's another word. I think it starts with an M. I can't think of it else.
Masochist.
Yeah, not in a masochistic way, but like, yeah. I mean, I push myself hard, you know, when I work out or when I train or when I do stuff. Even just like, you know, it seems relatively simple, but even just agreeing to come to a conversation and like, you know, be on this podcast, like there's an element of discomfort to putting yourself out there, putting your words out into the universe that I could very easily just like curl up into a ball and be like, no, I'm busy, because it's easier maybe to be shy. It's easier to not speak. And so I've been very good as a result of going through a good bit of pain through life at just like recognizing, being aware of when I have that inner resistance and being like, oh, you again. Hey, hey, you. All right. I guess I got to do the thing, you know? And that's just led to goodness in my life. Every single time, pretty much. Even some of the most terrifying things, like getting up on a high line. Oh my God, the first time I stood on a high line. A high line, for anyone listening, is like a slack line rigged at a height where, you know, the ground is significantly far below you and you're wearing a harness. Now, there are some crazy motherfuckers out there who free solo it. I'm not one of them. I don't need that level in my life, but it's still terrifying to do nonetheless, amongst many other things. But I felt huge resistance to it and was like, oh, fuck, I guess I got to do this thing.
That's fascinating, isn't it? Like, and going back to shouting out Pittsburgh Tough Club, the fact of doing something that you perceive as being scary, but logically know nothing bad's going to happen to you, whether it's getting into a tub of frozen water or going up on this slack line, you know, X thousand, whatever feet up, but yet you still have a harness where it's like, you know, all these safety measures are in check. You're going to be fine.
Mm-hmm.
Yet there's still this apprehension to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Even though logically it's all good.
Mm-hmm.
How do you find a way do you mentally talk yourself through it? What gets you to do that?
Breath. No amount of mental talk has been really helpful. Not that it's, you know, everything's so nuanced. Like, of course, your mental conversation matters. If you're just convincing yourself not to do something, that matters. But at least at this point, I have a pretty good handle of when I'm feeling some resistance. And so regardless of then the mental chatter in my skull, because typically the mental chatter is supporting the resistance, it can create some convincing arguments. It's like, the first time you sit down in that ice water, it's like if you trust the mental chatter in your skull, you're going to get right out. You're going to hyperventilate, it's going to take your breath away, and your mind is going to convince you that you're in danger because your nervous system is having a big reaction. So instead, you tune back into your breath and you just have faith and you trust in your breath, and putting that faith, putting that trust into an innermost part of yourself, you start to develop this sense of self-efficacy. And so even when things are scary, you can still act. And I think that's what real courage is. That's what I try to embody. That's what I try to give to people, is like, it's easy to be courageous when things are easy, but real courage is when things aren't easy, when they're hard, when you don't have firm ground to stand on, when it's fucking scary to talk about something, and you're deciding, I'm going to do this anyways, and you do it. And maybe that decision isn't at a mental place. Maybe it's not at like, yeah, I'm going to do this. I got this. I'm a confident bad motherfucker. But it's just like, I'm going to dive in anyways. And the person who is in the middle of that dive and the person who's entering that deep water is different than the person who is standing on the edge.
So how do you get to a place where you know that being that person that jumps into the water versus the person who's standing on the edge, how do you know that this thing isn't going to kill you? That this internal resistance that you're feeling is something for you, a challenge for you to conquer, as opposed to a legitimate fear, survival, I could actually die doing this reaction.
Yeah. You don't always. There's definitely an element of like, you need to get wise. You need to gain some experience in this world. You need to start to trust your intuition on things. There are things you absolutely shouldn't do, right? Like, I approach an ice bath, and it's been years of doing it. Each time, fucking nervous. Each time, my mind says, you don't have to do this right now. Look, no one would even notice. And yet, if I walked up to a lake full of alligators, yeah, I'm going to have a very similar, like, inner resistance that's like, don't do this. You don't have to do this. I'm going to listen to that one because there's no sense in it, because there are real risks. There are things you don't want to do that you're going to be scared of. That protective voice inside of you is trying to serve you. It's a survival mechanism. And so much of like Tub Club is learning to navigate that survival mechanism so that you have a better handle of it and it doesn't control you. But that doesn't mean that you should like dive into the deep end of the pool if you know you can't swim. Like, you're not going to learn how to literally swim when you dive into the deep end of the pool. If you have support around you that, is ready to save you, maybe you give it a chance, especially if you're open and willing to like learn on the fly, but you don't go out by yourself and dive into the deep end of the pool when you know you can't swim, because you'll die.
And it's almost the analogy or parallel I'm seeing here is like with jumping into a tub of ice. There's almost this level of, and what it sounds like is this level of pushing back that resistance to the best of your ability. So you might not just jump into an ice bath if you've never experienced cold water. Maybe you get a cold shower first. Maybe you only do a 30-second cold shower. And then you kind of work your way up to it to realizing, oh, maybe this isn't so bad. It's almost like a exposure therapy in a way.
That's right. Yeah, that's beautifully said too. I mean, that's just like especially when you're like a solo practitioner, if you will, and you're trying to master yourself kind of by yourself, which is great. You should always be exploring, but there are a lot of people who are out here who will help you, and there's a lot of resources available that you can read and learn. But exposure therapy is perfect. That's actually how I got better at cold exposure, because it sucked. The very first one, it was terrifying. And if I didn't have the accountability of people around me, I wouldn't have lasted. Even the first time I ever did it was 50 seconds in like a 50-degree creek. And, that was really hard. And the next time was like 2 minutes in a legit like ice tub. And that was incredibly hard. And I thought that might be the peak of it. But then just like you're saying, you get in, you take a warm shower and you turn it to lukewarm and I can't think of my way through this, but I can breathe my way through this. And all of a sudden that lukewarm just is normal. And I turn it a little bit cooler and I'm just gradually increasing that exposure. And having faith in my breath and my ability to calm down in that exposure. It's like everything that we do. You go to jujitsu, you don't start jujitsu, take one class, not really learn anything in one class, but like, think you know something and think you're a bad motherfucker and like go sign up for a tournament and join ADCC and like, yeah, you're not going to be successful in that way. That's not productively diving into the deep end. That's not how you're going to grow as a person, but exposure over time, you start to change. And that change takes time, but you for sure change. You're always changing. You're always transforming.
Yeah, I think I just saw an Alan Watts quote. It was something to the effect, almost like a corollary to what you're saying, which was like, let me look it up because I just tweeted it.
Mm-hmm.
And make sure I get it right because tweeter.
Yeah. That's such a good point though, just to circle back real quick.
Do it.
Learning to trust your intuition or really learning to listen to your intuition is so important to live a good life. Because if you don't have a good understanding of like what's actually a threat and what's not a threat or something that you can overcome, then you're just going to live in a state of fear and you're susceptible to control. And I think we're seeing that in a big way across society. And if more individuals would get a better handle of like that inner voice and being able to better navigate decision points, we would live in a much, much better world. And what that is at like what that's called at a physiological standpoint is your ability to regulate yourself, self-regulation. And so you've probably heard of like dysregulated systems, dysregulated nervous systems, dysregulated immune systems. And it's like, what that is to me is someone not having a good handle, not having that self-efficacy, not having that trust and faith in themselves to be able to navigate a stressful or some type of circumstance that they're encountering, and instead just cowering back, and choosing not to listen and keeping their perspective limited. Because it can be terrifying to open yourself up and terrifying to confront suffering head on and terrifying to come to grips with the enormous like power that lives within you. It can be very scary. And you're going to go through some dark moments as you discover more about yourself in that way.
And even the underlying message there that it sounds like is a fear of being wrong, a fear of thinking that, oh, I was wrong at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm not wrong. And it kind of relates to the Alan Watts quote I was talking about, which is, you're under no obligation to be the same person you were 5 minutes ago.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of fear that I've seen, and especially when you're like in a certain friend group or whatnot, to go outside that group think.
Mm-hmm.
You identify with something, whether it's a political party, whether it's an affiliation of some sort, whether it's even just like with friends, and people say stuff and then you disagree with it, but you don't speak your truth from it. You just agree with it. And then over time you start realizing and seeing the error in it. But for you to admit that there was an error means that you had to be wrong at one point.
Mm-hmm.
That's difficult to do.
Mm-hmm. It's very difficult to do. You basically are sacrificing a part of yourself, something that you've attached to yourself. So it kills me about the push for like self-identity. Like, you see it all through colleges right now too, and just kind of all through society, this like identifying as something. It's like, who the fuck are you to say what you identify as? Like, your identity is based on how other people perceive you, essentially. And for you to say what you identify as is not reality. Yeah, crap, I had. Oh no. Oh, even more so than just your friend group, though, I have a great concern about just our digital landscapes. I noticed this with like younger generations, coming up and like having a digital identity, and then not having the strength to become different than something that maybe they said digitally, like, I'm a gangster, or I'm a whatever supporter, or I'm a such and such. And you've put this online. You've made it like concrete in a weird way, like digitally concrete.
It's not going away.
Yeah, it's not going
forever.
away. It's there. And then to go against who you were is terrifying, and it's like, well, what do I even stand for then? Or whatever the thoughts come up. Like, you see these ridiculous pictures of yourself from, 10 years ago. Imagine if you still felt compelled to identify with the things that mattered to you like 10 years ago or 20 years ago.
There's an element of this that goes even deeper in relation to like what I'm doing and what I've done with my Instagram, where a whole bunch of the reason my Instagram blew up was due to me kind of focusing on these kind of like taboo stories that involved consciousness, that involved aliens and like the mind and stuff I found very fascinating. What happened recently is that I've not had the same energy to produce those same videos. Instead, I want to focus more on kind of getting that audience to the podcast, because I feel like there are such deeper and more meaningful conversations that are occurring in this podcast space than those conversations around, okay, whether or not this ball is from Mars, or if this guy actually teleported to a different dimension. And I find it fascinating because, to wrap this back, is like the videos that I'm putting out now in relation to the podcast aren't getting as many views. And I can tell that my follower number is even dropping a little bit because of it. So there's a trap in there, which is staying that same person you were because the social landscape has been pushing you that direction. Oh, cool. I'm going to get the validation of these videos. I'm going to get validated on creating these weird things. I'm not going to get validated if I create something that's more true to who I am. And I think that has been a very powerful shift I've been looking at recently. It's like, fuck it.
Wow.
Fuck it. These people don't want to follow it because this is the true core essence of reality as I see it, or information that will truly take their life to the next level. Then do I really want them to be a follower? Do I really want this friend in my friend group if they're not going to be open-minded to these new ideas that I'm coming across? And that's it's a tough thing to sit with.
Yeah, very much so. Especially as it starts to get into like financial means too. You start sacrificing like your sources of income. You start sacrificing your validation of yourself. Like, oh, I thought myself this person who had so many followers, or this person who was able to get all this interest, and now I'm changing and people are not vibing with it in the same way. And yet I bet, and tell me if I'm wrong, there's been some surplus. There's been some people now coming and resonating with things that weren't before. And maybe you don't know that yet. But that will shortly happen.
I've seen a mixture of comments in regards to, they're still followers. And I've seen a mixture of comments in regards to, oh, this is really wise. And then the other ones, which is like, don't interpret the Jesus and da-da-da-da-da, and I'm fucking mad. And I think that that's probably just
How dare you have a perspective on something.
You don't get to think about Jesus. He is perfect. You are not. Damn you to hell. Yeah, but it's, I don't think I've fully seen it yet, but I don't think it matters. I think the stronger position to look at it is, do I feel fulfilled in creating the content? Is this content that I want to be out there? And even more so, is it aligned with my mission? My mission is to have a really big podcast. My mission is to have more people listening to the podcast than anything else. I would trade every follower I have on every platform for that to be just the downloads I get on the podcast, because these conversations, and I'm getting better. I'm by no means perfect when it comes to this podcast, but I do know that but these conversations, in my opinion, are the most important thing for people to have, or like the information to digest, or ideas to explore at the very least. And so if I'm not putting out content that's directing people to this podcast, then I'm failing my biggest mission. So my option is to keep putting out content that's going to bump my Instagram followers up. Or I could step aside, put that ego away, put away that materialistic identity that I have with the followers, and say, fuck it. I might lose. What if I lose 100,000? Fine. I'll have 20,000 left that are actually here for the resonant message that I'm trying to get out there with the podcast. Yeah, this was a great doorway to get people in the door, but you know, if it's not for them, then okay, maybe they'll come back later.
That's so powerful. What was there any catalyst that like you're aware of that created that change within you when you started to feel that intuitive sense of speaking about things that aligned to your values and aligned to like that feeling of fulfillment within you?
I guess it's interesting because I was very happy, and I enjoyed making the videos that I was making in regards to like these off the wall stories. I enjoyed doing it when I was doing it. I think something that kind of started getting into me was the community that it was creating. It was a little bit more divisive. It was a little bit more argumentative. People who are a little bit more lost in the world, which is okay. I mean, I'm happy for them to come in. But I think that there was just an element that I realized it wasn't serving the bigger mission. You know, it was serving a smaller mission of growing the Instagram account, but it wasn't serving that bigger mission of growing the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where I realized, like, I have 120,000 followers. Why are my downloads not that high?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, there's a little bit of a disjointed nature between the podcast and the Instagram. It's like, oh, so maybe I should alter that a little bit. And then you post that one video and it only gets a couple thousand views, and you're like, fuck, maybe I shouldn't do this. Maybe I shouldn't be doing this. I'm not getting validated from this.
Mm-hmm.
Why would I do it if I'm not getting validated? And then that's whenever it comes to that introspection of, oh, are you really just doing this for validation?
Mm-hmm. So that feeling of like the resistance, like, oh shoot, should I go back to what I was doing? Recognizing that before it took the wheel, and you changed essentially back to receive that validation. There was a moment of introspection that you became aware of.
Yeah, it's asking yourself, why are you doing this?
Mm-hmm.
Why are you doing this thing? Yeah, realizing that it's what is it in me that wants this to be done? Like, why am I taking this action? Another example of this, I talked about this. Did I talk about my last podcast? No, I talked about it in Odyssey number 84 with Caroline Gutierrez, where I was telling her about me doing this introspective work in regards to the podcast. And I listened back to one of my podcasts, and I'm sitting there listening to myself, and I'm thinking, dude, Clayton, shut up. Like, thinking, just shut up. Just, you asked the question, all of this next 30 seconds of rambling, stop. And I sat there for so long. I'm like, why am I doing this? Why am I just rambling on? And what I came to realize, there's a physical and a metaphysical answer to this. What I was doing was not thinking that I was being heard. I didn't think what I was saying was being heard. And an element of this is the fact that I didn't have myself in my ear like I do now. Like I couldn't hear myself. And another element, I think, was just like not being seen, or thinking that I wasn't able to provide value, or I wasn't valuable. So I was going on these like rambling monologues. I'd be like, you know, here's an example. I'd be like, Tyler, how'd you, you know, get to this place? Like, what's your, here's a good example of like what we were talking about earlier, is like, oh, what's the difference between consciousness and awareness? Because like awareness is really weird, because it's like kind of like this ability to like look at things, but then consciousness is kind of like, you know, our ability to connect to it. And then, you know, kind of there's like, so I'd go and just start answering the question. And then you're sitting there like, Okay, yeah, you answered the question.
Yeah.
So there is no space for you to talk. And I realized that that whole conundrum was linked to wanting to be heard. It's like, dude, you got a mic in front of your face. They're going to hear you.
Yeah. So now you feel like you are heard and you're able to create space.
Yeah, I did some meditation around it. I, kind of hyped myself up a little bit. Like, I
Yeah.
am valuable. There's value I have to give.
Ain't fucking men.
Yeah. And so then it snowballed into me realizing, like, going back to the bigger mission. This is actually a good parallel. I didn't realize this. Of why am I doing this? Why do I have Tyler Being sitting right in front of me talking to him? It's to understand his perspective of reality. It's to learn from him. It's to challenge ideas that I feel like I already know the answer to. So if I'm asking a question and then answering it, I've just set you up with everything that I believe. So why would you even attempt to deviate? Because I'm hosting a podcast. You don't want to, ruffle feathers and make, a mess. But why not just actually sit here, ask you a question, and hear what your thoughts are? Because then I get to update my perspective on the entire thing. Like I just did. If I would have given you the entire answer, I don't think I would have heard you talking about, your consciousness dips into awareness and brings it out. Like that's a gold nugget right there that I would have not only robbed myself of, but also robbed the audience as well.
Yeah. And that's not an original like thought, by the way. I don't even know if I have any original thoughts, but that comes from
it's all good.
Say it again.
Patanjali.
That comes from Patanjali. Yeah. And then of course, like it marinates inside of you, and then how I express it is different than Patanjali expressed it in his book, and likely significantly different than he expressed it in his life. But that's how it's resonated for me. That's how it's felt when I've gone as deep as possible in meditation.
Well, it's good you do that too, because you're a Westerner trying to articulate an Eastern idea from thousands of years ago.
Yeah.
Shit changes.
Absolutely.
And it's going to hit people different than if they would have went and read Patanjali. If they want to go know more, it's good to know that exists, but I wouldn't worry about it.
Yeah. That is wonderful introspection though, that you have like gained on yourself. That has been so important in my life. I always say like within the last couple of years, but it's probably been happening for quite a long time, of just like trying to recognize when I need to shut the fuck up. Like when I'm just like talking out of my ass, and when I'm saying something or asking something that actually aligns to something within me that I care about. And I've gotten pretty good at just shutting up and embracing silence. And so like often in day to day, I'm pretty quiet because I just like to listen. And I'll insert myself if I feel like I want to, but oftentimes I'll just listen and, let a conversation ride until someone asks me something, or until I feel like I actually have something to say, so that I'm not just saying words to be a part of it, or to like, so that I don't feel like I'm missing out. And, again, everything's so fucking nuanced. I don't want to be silent for safety. I'm not trying to not be heard. I am both the program and the programmer. And so there's a big part of it that I have to put myself out there to create the world that I want to live in. But creating that world I want to live in involves not speaking out of my ass and not saying things that I don't think are true, or making sure I'm not saying things that make me feel weak.
And that's a big one too. Not feeling weak. Not doing things that make you feel weak.
And that's where the introspection comes in, because sometimes you'll just do it, and then you realize you feel weak from something that you've done or something that you've said. And okay, well, it's already out there. There might not be takesy backsies. Maybe you can apologize or something, like, or at least apologize to yourself and forgive yourself. And that's where it really matters. Someone else might not need to forgive you, or might not accept an apology, but you can certainly forgive yourself and then become someone different, 5 minutes from now. And, if you've determined that you've said something or done something, taken some action that makes you feel lesser, that makes you feel weaker, that makes you feel smaller, all of these words trying to arrive at some feeling within you, that you need to have the introspection, that you need to have the awareness to recognize within you. And when you feel that, then you can learn from it. You know, it's a signal, and you can choose different next time.
A big phrase that's coming to mind right now, because I've been noticing this so much recently in my life, is when people say sorry, but they didn't do anything wrong.
Mm-hmm.
They did nothing wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing wrong, or on purpose, right? Like, I'm sorry is like, I did something and it actively hurt you, or like impeded you or something. But like, if you're trying to move by somebody, it's like, excuse me, you know, it's not, I'm sorry. It's almost like this, I'm sorry for existing type
Mm-hmm.
thing. And I've noticed this a lot recently, just so much. And I don't know where it's coming from. I don't know why, but, and maybe it's something I'm saying right now so that people can actively pay attention to when they're actually saying sorry in life.
Mm-hmm.
It's a weird thing to get away from.
It is.
And especially like if I've even noticed like reaching out to people, or I don't know, like,
Sorry to bug you.
yeah, or if something messed up, if I made a mistake, it's like, you know, there's times to apologize and actually say sorry.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also times to thank the other person for awareness into your life. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
thanks for helping me out. Not like sorry to be a nuisance. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
thanks for helping me. And even just that mental shift, talking about perspectives.
Yeah, because you said it so well. Sorry for existing. Ugh. Ugh.
All right.
It's so fucking deep, but that's what it is. Sometimes I feel it in myself. I see it in others. It makes you cringe, you know, this like, oh, sorry. Oh, sorry.
That's it.
Oh, sorry for sorry. You know, I like playfully, but kind of cuttingly sometimes be like, well, straight up tell people, because I'm still working on it myself very much, you know, don't say sorry unless you've done something wrong, you know, and right away people will say, oh, sorry. And then you gotta laugh at them. You're like, hey.
You kind of did it on the way here. You kind of did it whenever you texted me. You were like, oh, I'm going to be about 20 minutes late. I was getting my daughter ice cream.
Oh, that was my wife.
That was your wife. Oh.
Yeah. But she's pregnant, so she deserves ice cream.
Yeah.
She's wonderful. Yeah.
But see, like, you were like, okay, sorry, my wife wanted ice cream. I was like, don't apologize for being like a good husband.
Thank you for that. I do still stand by that apology, because I don't like to be late, and I still ended up being here pretty much on time, but I was hoping to come in here a little bit earlier and settle in with you and such. It's all worked out just fine, but you know, I stand by that apology because I try to be on time as best as possible.
I guess, and that gets in that nuance that we're talking about here, right? It's like, where's the nuance of like an emergency actually did pop up and I need to apologize versus like,
yeah, it's almost like I made a choice that I knew would make me not as present at the time that I wanted to be present. And so I could either do that.
Down?
I made a choice that basically made me late for the time that I wanted to be here. I knowingly made a choice. And I have a little bit of, I don't want to do that from a place of like confidence. Like, this is just who I am. I'm just going to like do this. And so I just felt compelled to like let you know that that's not how I want to conduct myself. And so I apologize for conducting myself like that right now. And that's not how I would want to conduct myself as I go forward.
I guess I'm trying to look at it though in terms of like the bigger picture. Like, I get what you're saying at like that level of, you know, I don't want to be late. But in that moment, there was either something that occurred, something happened off text, where it became a higher priority for you to treat your wife to ice cream versus being, let's say, on time. Right? So how do you feel like that like, how is it a hierarchical thing? Like, what, like, how do you see that it's worth or empowering even that I take care of, that I treat my wife to ice cream and be a little bit late and apologize for being late versus, I guess, saying no to your wife, like, I have a commitment at this time. You kind of see where I'm going with that?
Yeah. And I actually really appreciate like the pushback on it, because it's not a perfect answer, and it's very possible that I might feel differently about it like a few days from now, after, if I even like care to let myself really think about it, because it's an interesting like little microcosm of life to like analyze, if you will.
That's what I'm all about, though.
Yeah,
I like
for
the
sure.
little
It's
things.
beautiful to like dive into little, micro glimpses of life because often they contain, what's happening at a greater level. Um, so yeah, um, I- just playing situations as they are, trying to be as present as possible. And so here I am after like going out for a little breakfast / brunch, and kind of looking at the time and being like, well, we could hustle to the car right now. Or she said she wanted to go get ice cream. We could walk down the block slowly because she's very large right now and beautiful and amazing. And we could get ice cream. And yeah, I'm just like, I'm in that presence, and that's how I want to be. And so that's what I chose to do.
All right. Well, then I'll accept your apology.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. If anyone that knows me too will know that I'm not a very good texter, and I have since, for the most part, stopped apologizing for that. But a big part of that is like, and I have a great friend who's helped me figure out how to put messages back on unread, and that's a game changer. But often it's because when I'm with someone, which is a lot, I end up being around people quite a lot. I'm trying to make myself be as present as possible with that person because that's how I want to conduct myself. And so if I get a text message, maybe it distracts me for a moment and I look at it, which is a poor habit that I'm trying to break. It'd be better if I just didn't look at it at all. But I'll look at it and then immediately put it down and not even get to think about it. But now it's been read, or, read digitally, like it's been opened.
Maybe you need to put the read receipts back on.
So that's what I've started doing.
Okay.
And this is very recent, by the way. This is like this week. Yeah. Shout out Eric.
That's too funny. Shout out Eric at Topa Club. Yeah. So, dude, your wife's almost pregnant again.
Yeah.
Or
yeah.
no, she's not almost pregnant again.
No,
she's
yeah.
almost due.
Any day now. Yeah, a little boy will be here.
Nice, dude.
Yeah. Wow. It's it's a lot.
Part 2, huh?
Yeah, it's a lot of excitement, a lot of nervousness. Mostly excitement.
It's interesting. I don't have kids, and I'm interested from this viewpoint, right? Like, you're a rather conscious, aware individual. Do you ever take a step back and look at maybe parallels between like the way you were brought up and the way you're raising your kids now as to how to increase their levels of awareness and consciousness?
100%. Yeah. I don't want to I try not to overanalyze my parents, because analysis typically isn't, you typically aren't analyzing something and being like, man, that was so great. And my parents were great. My parents are great. I had a wonderful childhood. But there are definitely elements within my life and within my upbringing that I want to make sure that I am more cautious of with my children, in the sense of like just having some harder conversations with them, having just a much more open dialogue, a much more trusting communication. Everything from like just making sure that they know always that they can tell me anything, and that even if, it'll be iterative, even if I have not the reaction they're hoping for right away, that I'll be able to come back to them and just be open to listen to them and to offer the best advice that I can possibly muster from my own experience, which might not be perfect, but, can at least help them navigate a rather insane world. I hope to instill some things that my parents really did really well, giving me such a love and appreciation for the beauty of nature, and spending time outside and being a physical being, and really caring about physical freedom and my ability to move and move well and feel good, and navigate pain well. However, at the same time, I don't want to immediately give them pain medication. My parents didn't know. They don't know. We were all living in a toxic soup, and oftentimes we're not aware of the ingredients in that soup, because we're just in it. And so seeking pain medication as soon as something is off isn't the right move, in my opinion. I think that's the right opinion. Whereas that's what, they did for me. And thank God for pain medication at the same time. Excuse me.
Podcast wouldn't be complete
Um,
without a cough. So thank you for
yeah,
breaking that.
for
So,
sure.
yeah.
Yeah, and I hope to be able to help them manage pain and manage, even mental anguish without immediately looking for medication, without looking for, quote, like daddy, government, pharma, big medicine to come and rescue them so that they can start to learn the power within themselves. That's going to be uncomfortable because, seeing your kiddo sick sucks. It's like the worst feeling. It's the most beautiful thing when they are like thriving and, when Sophia is bubbly and she's like, trotting through the living room with a big smile on her face. And then it's just like the worst feeling in the world when she is not feeling well or, because you don't know the extent of it. There's always just this background fear of like, what if they die? And it's my fault, or not even that matters if it's your fault, but like, just what if this immense love is taken from me? And you got to be careful not to dive too far into that because it'll make you go crazy. But yeah, and I think a lot about what my parents like did or didn't do and try to rectify that or try to just choose the optimal path. And I know that I'm going to fuck up. I'm for sure going to fuck them up. Like, I'm a weird person. They're going to be fucked up as a result of that. And some of the things that I say, and they're going to say some crazy shit, I'm sure, to their classmates. That's going to get them in trouble too. But whatever.
Well, because what you're describing there, it sounds like if we're going back to mythology and mythos or ethos would be of that what is it? The over nurturing mother. The
the edible mother.
Edible mother, is that what it is?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because it sounds like you're trying to navigate that balance of how much nurturing and comfort versus like, oh, well, this is the real world. You got to go figure it out. How do you actively view that balance, or do you kind of just more naturally just go with whatever feels right?
I guess it's a little bit of both. I definitely feel it. I'm definitely aware of times where I'm like, no, like, you need to be safe right now. And I catch myself maybe being a little too cautious. It's kind of easy at times because my wife and my mother-in-law are very cautious. It'll be like 65 degrees out and they're like putting a big coat on Sophia. And I'm like, all right, no. Like, I'm going to take that off as soon as I get outside with her. Or like making her wear shoes, to be in the grass. And as soon as we get outside, I just take her shoes and socks off, so she can walk around and like be grounded to the earth and like feel the feels, things like that. Or like pushing her when we're at gymnastics or pushing her when we're in a playground for her to like kind of fuck up, like fall even a little bit and figure things out, or like really have to strain to like get up on something instead of just picking her up and putting her on it. So I'm definitely very cautious about it. I call myself the anti-aircraft parent.
The anti-aircraft.
Yeah, to get rid of the helicopter parent that is nearby.
The ones that is always circling.
Yeah.
Because there's an interesting parallel in there with you were talking about how whenever you would see them doing something dangerous and it would get you to like kind of that fight or flight mode, you tense up a little bit. And I see the parallel there when we were talking about like the ice baths and doing stuff that are difficult and facing these challenges. So is there that element then of like, you kind of just got to let them fuck up. You got to let them scratch themselves in order for them to figure it out.
And, I don't want her to fall and get hurt and scratch herself. But yeah, I have to also let that happen. And it's, you play each situation as best you can while you're in it. If she's walking on a wall and it's like a foot off the ground, maybe I let her go and I don't hold her hand. And I'm like, you got this. And I tell her you can do this on your own. And at some point, that's going to be a mistake. She's going to fall and I'm going to be like, oh no, why wasn't I there? And then it's another when she's on like a 6-foot wall. Okay, then maybe I'm a lot closer because while I want her to challenge herself and to feel these feels of like fear, especially if she loses her balance a little bit, I don't want her to fall and get catastrophically hurt, obviously. So yeah, just always like playing that situation as best you can, trusting your intuition as best you can, Um, just to give a funny example, like when I was a little younger, before I had kids, I was in Glacier National Park, and we were going up a road called to get to Logan Pass. It's like at the top of the mountain, and everyone had to pull over for some reason. There was like a blockage in the road, and so we all pulled over, a huge line of cars, and this mountain goat, this beautiful white mountain goat, like 6-inch horns, comes walking up, and it was pretty chill. It came really close to us, and this woman comes running over with this little boy, and puts that little boy right in front of the goat.
Oh no!
To like take a picture, and I'm right there, and I'm like, I don't know what to do in this situation because this woman is a fucking idiot. Like, and I ended up not doing anything, and it ended up like being totally fine. But it's just like, man, there was no forethought there. Like, it would take nothing for that goat to just be like, why is this thing in my space? And to give just like a quick hit that could have changed that child's life.
This is why Darwin was wrong.
So yeah, you think about, I don't know, just that example just came up because I think about like, oh yeah, well, I want to take cool pictures of Sophia. I want her to get exposed to things, even to other beings, other creatures, but you also need to be cautious, because you don't know what something else's intention is. You don't know how something else might react.
Not sure what that level of danger is, perceived threat. She doesn't know.
It's just a challenging, like, landscape of living. Yeah.
You gonna get her to Top Club anytime soon?
Oh God, someday. Yeah. I think the boy much sooner, even though he'll be much younger. I think Olia, my wife, will be a lot more accepting of me, like pushing the boy into more dangerous things quicker. But
are you assuming his gender already?
Oh, very much so. Yeah, I'm very much assuming his gender. He's a little boy. He's got a little penis. It's gonna be an uncircumcised or just a normal penis.
How do you arrive at that conclusion? Dude, I've done no research into circumcision whatsoever. How did you come to that conclusion, or like what?
You just kind of take a step back. It's so nice to be able to take a step back. Like, now that I've been able to regulate my nervous system better, it's easier to take a metaphorical step back in life and just look at something from outside of myself. And like, I don't know, there just seems like not a great idea to cut off a part of the human body. That doesn't seem like a good move. I think we probably come equipped correct for the most part. I'm sure there's abnormalities, right? But for the most part, we come equipped correctly, and just like doing a little bit of research beyond the typical like bullshit that comes up on the first 3 pages of Google, you come to discover that that's like the most sensitive part of a penis. And like, man, what could the quality, how much better could the quality of my life be if I still had the most sensitive parts of my penis? Like, how much better would sex be? How much better would like my life just have been?
Do you think, what is it that makes you think that it would have increased your quality of life?
I think sex would have been better.
You think sex would have been better?
Would be better, yeah.
Would be better, more intense.
Yeah, just feel better. Yeah, and there are things that I have no idea, probably like deep level trauma, if you will, at like some cellular level from having something removed, or losing that sensitivity. Who knows how that impacts like the flow of energy and blood, down through there.
I wonder if they've done any studies.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm going to do a quick Google search.
But it just seems, and I'm sure people can make convincing arguments towards the other direction. The often like cited one is like, well, there's a risk of an infection if you don't get it. Like, it's harder to clean or something. It's like, is that just because people thought it was weird to like touch a penis and clean it? Because that seems pretty normal. You touch a butthole and clean it. You touch everything and clean it. It's a baby, and then you teach them as they get older.
Which is a pretty normal thing, right?
Yeah.
This is like a little bit of effort that needs to get put on. What to know about circumcised and uncircumcised penis? Circumcision is a surgical procedure that removes the foreskin of the penis. Differences between, you want to know something kind of embarrassing?
Mm-hmm.
You want to talk about how bad our sexual education is in this world, in this country?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't actually know what circumcision was until I was a sophomore in college.
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea if I was circumcised or not.
Mm-hmm.
And I am. And I always thought that circumcision was like kind of shaving the tip of the head off.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think that there was like foreskin.
Mm-hmm.
So when they said foreskin, I was thinking like the tip of the head.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, holy fuck, did that happen to me? Like, I have no idea. And then I figured out in college and I was like, all right, that's a little bit better. I was like, okay, at least they didn't get that crazy. But, you know, to your point, I was like, oh shit, that's bad.
Yeah.
That's rough.
Probably similar, by the way. I didn't come equipped at a young age knowing these things. I don't remember when I learned like about that. I know I didn't know what even like a normal penis is supposed to look like for a long time.
What is a normal penis?
A penis that still has foreskin.
Okay.
Unlike
a
circumcised penis.
I got you.
You know, we say this word uncircumcised as if like there's circumcised and there's uncircumcised, but it's like, no, there's circumcised and then there's how it comes from nature.
God ready.
You know,
it's an interesting
it's not
point.
uncircumcised. That's language corrupting your perspective. It's just
it's another
normal
way.
dick.
The ready-made package.
Yeah, it's the ready-made package.
Let's see here. Yeah, people may have a circumcision for many different reasons, including religious reasons. People who follow.
I want my son's dick to look like my dick. Can't be different.
The Jewish or Muslim faith, cultural reasons, a family history of circumcision. Yeah, right there. You just said it. So a person may decide to continue the tradition, personal preference,
traditions.
For health reasons. It says this is medical news today, so I don't know if they're bought or paid for or anything. One 2016 study estimated that 37 to 39% of males across the world have a circumcision. The researchers estimated that 71.2% of males in the United States have circumcision. That's a high percentage, so that's well above average in the entire world. The areas of the world, according to American Urological Association, with the highest rates of circumcision are the Middle East, South Korea, and the United States. The lowest rates are in Europe, Latin America, and most of Asia. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, I'm not even going to read it because I think their trust level has dropped to an all-time low. Appearance, yeah, we just went on that. Effects on sex. Scientific studies have produced conflicting reports on the effect of circumcision on sex. That's interesting. For example, one 2013 study looked at the sexual sensations of 1,059 uncircumcised normal males and 310 circumcised males. That seems weird that would have such a different... That's not...
Yeah, science is hard.
Yeah. Can't we get... If there's more circumcised than normal... Wouldn't they be able to find 1,000? Why wouldn't you have a similar circumcised against uncircumcised groups?
Maybe the data didn't give them what they wanted. I don't know. I don't know who funded the study or what it was about.
Dude.
You never know. There's good science out there, by the way. I'm pretty critical right now. I'm super skeptical of most things.
As you should be.
There really is good science out there. I've worked with some good scientists. At least I think so. Through my grad school. I think these people were very diligent and were really trying to arrive at objective truth through like measurement and data collection. I think it just gets convoluted and fucking bonkers
once funding it.
Yeah, once you start arriving at like the funding or who's like if it gets published, you know, or what part of it gets published.
What does the title say of the article versus what the study actually said? Are you interpreting the results correctly? Are they incorrect?
Yeah.
There's a lot of call. So what did you know? Because this was something that came up the other day at Tup Club. Is that who introduced you? Eric, I think, did. And he was saying something about how you have a graduate degree. I was like, he has a graduate degree? I was like, where'd that come from?
Yeah. And it's just a master's of science. I don't know. School has come relatively easy, so maybe I don't give myself enough credit sometimes. But after I changed career path, I knew that I really wanted to go back and study something.
Wait, what were you before this?
Well, originally, I went to school to be a mechanical engineer, and I graduated in 2012, and I worked for a big consulting company in the energy space for about 9 years. And it just was like crushing my soul. It was like stealing my soul from me slowly, and I saw what it would take to progress in this organization. It would be to sacrifice more and more of my soul, both to connect with people that I didn't want to connect with, and to learn things that I didn't want to learn, and probably eventually to make, if you really get to the higher ends of it, to make moral decisions that wouldn't be in line with, what my innermost being values. And the company does really great things through the world, and also really terrible things through the world. I'm very critical of them for some of the modeling that they do, long-term modeling, like related to the climate, for example. This essentially shows like, no, we need to sacrifice millions of poor people so that we can save the planet. Like, all right,
Ooh.
okay, that sounds like a really
Ooh.
like just thing. Yeah, that's really diversity, equity, and inclusive of you.
Mm-hmm.
Let's let the poor people die as we raise energy costs, as we move towards greening our energy. And it's like you just learn more and more as you go. But anyways, that's a big aside we could get into if you wanted to. Ultimately left that career path and took some time. Thank God for my amazing wife giving me that opportunity. And it was a long time coming. It was a conversation we had even when we first got together, but like it was a lot different when it actually happened. The hardship of like having then a single income, and her kind of carrying me for a little while, a little longer than a little while. She really was amazing in that way. And I got to go back to school and study health. And it was right as fucking COVID started. Great. So it was a subpar education in my opinion, but I made myself read a lot, extracurricular. I made myself study a lot, and then ended up getting into like the autonomic nervous system and understanding the dysregulation that you see across society, people unable to manage their stress, the like mental health crisis that we're currently facing that is largely tied into the physical health crisis that we're currently facing. And so, yeah, I got a master's of science in health education. And a part of that was writing a thesis, a very long paper, and running a legit, like IRB approved study investigating a hummed exhale. And specifically, actually, not just the hummed exhale, but comparing a hummed exhale to what we know to be a powerful modality, which is just slower breathing.
What is a hummed exhale?
A hummed exhale?
Yeah.
So just simply like a breathe in. And so you can create a hum. You can create a vibration inside of your body, which is very similar to maybe a yogic But my purpose for investigating the hum, rather than a yogic om, was to see if something could be maybe more practical, something that could be useful for just any person to better manage their lives. And now I'm pretty much convinced that it is. And I use it quite a lot for myself, and I encourage a lot of other people to use it, whether they be sitting in my ice water or whether they be just going about their daily life. Pretty much anytime I'm about to get up and speak in front of people, I'll put on a class, presentation, go to an interview, come and be on a podcast, get in the ice water, I'm centering myself with some hums, and they vary from very like low and quiet if I'm really nervous or if I don't want to like raise attention to me, to if I'm in my car, coming kind of loud. And yeah, there seems to be a lot of good data. I did a whole literature review on it. And what it seems to show is that it improves a metric known as heart rate variability. And that's also what I found in my own study. Heart rate variability is essentially a measure of your heart's ability to respond to stress optimally. So if a stimulus occurs, is your heart optimally responding, or is it like all out of whack? Can you relax once relaxation is possible? Can you rev yourself up when revving yourself up is necessary? And is that process smooth and healthy, or is it dysregulated? And then a few other things. I measured anxiety. I actually measured perceived anxiety with just like a fairly easy scale, and it seemed to reduce anxiety as well.
Wow. And this is all just from humming? Do you do it through, you do it, it sounds like you only do it before certain events, or do you actually do it throughout your day?
I do it throughout my day if I think about it. But yeah, oftentimes I think about it when you're feeling that like anticipation or a little bit of anxiousness or a little bit of like whatever, if you just want to center yourself.
What are the biomechanical, I don't even know if that's the right word, but like the actions that are occurring that are making this increase your heart rate variability and other things in your body?
Yeah. I don't know it perfectly, so there's probably much more to be said. But what it seems to be doing is stimulating your vagus nerve. So you have a series of nerves through your body. Your vagus nerve is one of them, and it's highly related to your relaxation response. So when your vagus nerve is activated, you are becoming more relaxed. Your heart rate is slowing down. Your breath is typically slowing down, and you're entering a more calm and centered state where you're able to connect both with yourself and with others. And so when you're like in that fight or flight reaction, everything sort of shuts down inside of you because it's a survival response. You're on edge. You're really aware. You're kind of hyper aware. It's very difficult to connect with another person. It's very difficult to connect with your own intuition when you're in that aroused or stressed or, fight or flight feeling. And there's levels to this. There's like a full-fledged, like there's a fucking tiger running at you, or like just sitting in traffic and, not feeling good because you're on your way to work, or, someone just cut you off, or like you read something online that you disagreed with, and like in our modern society, we have so much stimulus. We're living in this hyper novel world. So many things are being consumed and taken in, and a lot of them are stress inducing. If you're not careful, you will interpret them as stressful, and you see someone disagree with you online or a perspective you don't like, and like you might interpret that as like a threat to your existence at some level. And so if you're not careful, you're kind of living in this low level fight or flight response throughout your day and not really relaxing in the way that you should be able to relax, which is when you relax, you're conserving energy. That energy can then be used for many other processes throughout your body, or just energy to have in your day-to-day life, to go get like a good workout in, or to feel good, or to be like awake and aware for your family or yourself. And so the more often that you can bring yourself into that relaxed state, that natural resting state, the better, basically. And then you have that reserve of energy for when you actually need it.
It's reminding me of what we were talking about earlier in regards to people being able to live longer.
Mm-hmm. You're definitely cutting your lifespan short by living in a chronically stressed state. Oh, significantly short. I mean, your all-cause mortality is way up. Yeah.
That's
Sorry,
crazy.
I cut you off.
No, you're good. Keep going if you got more to say on
No,
it.
I digress. Yeah.
No, it was just, that was exactly, the parallel that I was seeing there, which is crazy. And so it sounds like you're saying that one of these ways to activate, this is so funny, saying to like activate calmness, or you're calm induced, it's like an active calming.
It is.
Yeah. So is this like, I'm sure there's other ways, but this is a very powerful way to activate calmness. Just
That's right. There are many ways. It is an active process to become relaxed. Like it's always so funny when people are like, just relax. Like, oh yeah, sure. Let me just relax.
Have you ever tried to relax?
Yeah.
Fucking
have you ever told your girl or your partner to relax? Has it worked? Like, calm down. I'm helping.
You're freaking out right now. Relax. Go fuck yourself.
Yeah. Like, no, it's an active thing. So you can activate a part of yourself to help you relax. I actually like came to this in a weird way where through my life, I dealt with a lot of social anxiety. And I actually didn't realize how much I craved socialization. I kind of skirt the line between introvert and extrovert, but I end up getting a lot from putting myself out there and connecting with people. But through my life, it was so weird because I would like be around friends and, people I'd known for a while, and especially like if it was a group of them, and I would just feel so good, and like I'd be funny and like just easily like letting conversation flow, and things would all be good. And then there'd be like one-on-ones sometimes, even with like a good friend, and I'd feel this like inner like, I don't know what to say, freezing up feeling. And I didn't have words for that at the time. I didn't know what the difference was. And especially it became apparent like, as you're coming up and you're like trying to talk to women, or you're going out to bars and you're trying to talk to people, which is like fuck bars, by the way. Just as a quick aside, fuck bars. Fuck being in a place that's super loud that you can't talk to people when you're trying to make connections in the world. Stop doing that to yourself. Go find something you're interested in. Do that thing. Get good at it. You'll meet people. Anyways. Yeah.
We could dive on that for a while.
So it would just be so weird because it'd be like, wow, I feel like two different people. This one person who's unable to articulate himself and connect with others, and then a totally different person who like just feels really good to be. And that's why I started learning about like the autonomic nervous system, because that's ultimately what it was. It was like, I am more in a fight or flight, it's more of a stressed out sympathetic state. And when you're like that, you're just like, you're on guard. You're overthinking the next words coming out of your mouth. You're too hyper vigilant. You're looking for any perceived threat or any like element of discomfort, and you're just living in that. Whereas the other, it's like, how it is right now. You're just feeling relaxed. You're laid back. Words are easy. You're not overthinking it. We're able to connect. Our hearts are in sync.
Yeah. I'm even thinking about the parallel between how if you had two different friends, and let's say friend A, you're always in that fight or flight mode, but then friend B, you're always calm and relaxed around. Well, the friend A and friend B get together and they start talking about you. They're going to know two completely different people.
Yeah.
I think it's fascinating. So getting back to the humming, you made a comment that it's different than Om, right? Like Om, is it how did you find something that said it was different, or like what did you find there?
Well, I more just did it from the practical standpoint of like, if I was going to try to give something to people, like hum to save the world, like there's this underlying theme of like, I want to create a movement of like humming to save the world, right? And I think I can get a lot more people on board with trying to simply just hum. It's a lot more accessible. There's a little bit less of a weirdness to it. Now, I love an Om. I think it is a sacred word, and I think it is beyond my comprehension even. But my only purpose for going for the hum rather than the Om was to make it a little bit more accessible, so that, people who might not be open to letting out a few ohms would go for the hum, because I think it's still arriving at a very similar mechanism, like physiological mechanism inside, where you're creating that inner vibration. And the Om is very much doing that. And the Om actually probably is even more powerful, because the three distinct sounds of the Om, the oh, it's very low. It's like in the gut. It's oh, it's getting more into the chest. It's like nearer to the heart. It's coming up into the bottom of the throat. And so it's like these energy centers within you that you're touching and running up this chain inside of you. This
I can feel that. And I was thinking about this in terms of like frequency, right? Because you were talking about how you could do this in different frequencies, right? Like you go, which is really low. And then if you go super high, like, wow, you're almost I can feel that hitting different spots in my body when I'm humming. Did you see any research on that? The different frequencies?
Not enough to have any like strong conclusions on, but I think you're really onto something there. Just from like self-exploration, it's really interesting actually. Once it becomes less weird for you to do, you can like play around with the different tones and frequencies that you can create and how they kind of hit different places within you. I shared like a story at Tub Club the other night, but it was such a cool experience. when I was on a kind of a date with my wife. We did a little staycation because our vacation got kind of ruined because she got really sick and she just wasn't a happy camper. I still had a nice time.
That's all that matters.
But I mean, it would have been a better time if she was feeling good.
Yeah.
But so we did a staycation and fucking get a headache, and like never really get headaches anymore. Used to deal with like a lot of headaches, a lot of migraines for one reason or another. I'm not really sure. I'm so glad to be at a place in my health where I don't have that, but I'm starting to get a headache, and it was sinus related. I was like congested, and I just have enough. I could recognize that was the cause. That there was a pressure in my face that was creating a headache, and it's like, oh man, I want to have this great night with my wife, but here I am like in pain, and so I was just about to go and buy like something, like an allergy reliever or something, and then I caught myself and I was like, I'm just seeking the easy solution. Like, what can I do? What can I try at least? How can I explore myself? And so I started to create that vibration inside, this like, and I could bring it up, and you can kind of direct where it goes, and I could bring it up into my face. And after I did it for just like a short period of time, a few, handful of seconds in my face, the next like big, and I'm not going to make this sound that like, on the mic right here, but holy shit, had I loosened some stuff up by creating that vibration in my face. And so when I took that like, whatever you
kind
call
of like
that,
nasal congestion
I got a lot of stuff to come down into my throat, and I could get rid of it. I could spit it out. And so I just did it a few times, and lo and behold, the pressure diminished.
Whoa.
And I was like, whoa, that's cool. And then I didn't have a headache anymore. And I had a great dinner, and like, yeah, I had a great night. And I was like, fuck yeah, like, let's go.
I could just see you sitting at the dinner table there, just cheesing.
Yeah,
high on cloud nine. Nobody understands why. Like, you can't explain that to people.
No, yeah, or like, what am I going to say?
Yeah, what am I going to say?
My wife thinks I'm a weirdo sometimes because she's like, watching me do it.
Yeah. Babe, it fucking works.
Yeah, she knows,
Well, and on top of that, you don't have all these crazy chemicals now floating around your body, clogging up other shit, blocking other stuff.
Yeah. Everything's a trade-off. Yeah. You're in some pain, you take that Advil, and your liver's like, hey, thanks, man. Thanks for not caring. And the oxygen delivery to your cells also is like, what the fuck? Why are you doing that?
I can't do my job now.
Yeah.
You're blocking off other agents. People need to go do their job, and you're just saying no.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's something there with that Om, because like I've been seeing it as, and you just had the tug club that was like based around Om. So I think it's pretty cool that we're talking about this here.
It seems to align you to the frequency of the universe, the frequency of the world. Like if we are living in the mind of God, that is the word of God that is invisible but in the background of all things. And so if you are not tuned in, like how maybe a musical instrument can be out of tune, if you want to tune yourself in, the Om, and I'm sure several other like mantras are available to you to tune you back in and to get your frequencies at that cellular level, which impact the way that your cells are like working. It's impacting what they're perceiving as a threat and how they're operating, which ultimately influences how you feel at this greater level of being, of, this human being. But really, we're just a collection of trillions of cells trying to do their best, and you can tune them in with something like an Om.
Well, and on top of that, those trillions of cells are made up of billion or quadrillion, I don't know,
yeah, fucking
atoms,
beyond.
numbers, big numbers. And all of those atoms are vibrating at some rate.
Yeah, that's exactly.
And on top of this, what's fascinating, as you said, the word of God. And I study a lot of Paramahansa Yogananda. Do you follow him?
I don't know.
Oh, you're not familiar with him?
Yeah, you're going to turn me on to this. Yeah, please.
He's a beast. We'll talk about it. I think the audience has heard me, but I'm going to pull up. Have you heard of Autobiography of a Yogi?
I can't say that I have.
Dude,
maybe I have.
This dude's a fucking beast. I've talked about him with Mitch before. Have you seen this book?
I have not.
That's not English, but that's basically it.
Okay.
Let me see if I find the English one. We'll put him up here for a little bit. Get him in the background here. while we're talking about him. Dude's a beast. And he has these. He founded this like thing called Self-Realization Fellowship,
Okay.
and the basic premise of it is to like self-realize as God. Like here is a, and so what I've been doing the last 4 or 5 months, maybe 4 months, is he has these like lesson plans that he just mails to your house. It's like 18 lessons over the course of 9 months, and I think I'm on lesson 8 right now. And what it does is he actually breaks down like basically the way that he sees the spiritual world. And that book, first of all, start off with that book, Autobiography of a Yogi, because there's shit in there you're like, did this actually fucking happen? Like just shit of like I'm kind of getting down the wrong rabbit hole. Let's just leave it at crazy shit for now.
Okay.
Let's finish this thought. We can come back to it if we need to. But he does a lot of comparison with the Bible to the Bhagavad Gita, and then talks about it from like his perspective of his own self-realization journey. And he talks about the word of God, and every time it says the word, and so was the word, they're talking about Om. They're talking about that cosmic force that exists. It was like, because in Genesis, I think one of the very first things is like, and God said, or then the word of God is like one of the first things that happens.
Yeah.
And what that's alluding to is that cosmic vibration. They're talking about Om in a sense. So to kind of make this go full circle is like, you're calling in the cosmic force of everything into your body to heal every cell of your body. And on top of that, with this frequency we're talking about here, all the way to you're vibrating every cell of your body.
Yeah. Isn't that amazing? And these powers, like, and they are powers, are just out here to be learned and to be taken if you so choose.
Yeah, have you heard of I think they're called rishis in India.
I have heard of I don't know how to say it, but
I think it's rishi.
I've seen this word before.
It's an that's an accomplished or enlightened person. But what are the they get like obtain like these quote unquote like powers, if you will, like fucking think Doctor Strange of Marvel.
Okay. Yeah, and that's where it starts to get into where you're just like, we have no idea the capability of human beings.
Let me see here. What? I'll do this down.
And it's really easy to dismiss things like this, but fuck, we don't know anything. And like the more that I realize I don't know anything, the more I'm open and, still approach things with a very skeptical lens, but
yeah, I think that's what you have to do. And there's a power in learning from all these different there's a power in learning from different cultures in regards to all these things. And how do you articulate it to a certain person, or how do you understand it from I think is it a reishi? I thought a reishi.
reishi mushroom.
Reishi mushroom. Where did you go? Did I just lose it?
Yeah. Went off screen. I don't know.
Oh, where'd it go?
Yeah, that's interesting. You bring up the self-realization of like God. I actually finally in this last year of my life like spoke to a professional therapist, and I'd never done anything like that before. But I was finding myself just in a place where I was not making. I was out of alignment with my thoughts and actions, and I wanted to bring myself into more alignment to better integrate my personality. And feel like I was essentially betraying myself less, like make better use of my time. So I was like, all right, let me just try to find somebody and talk to them. And I did some research, found someone. I liked what they like said about themselves. Essentially, there's like a big list you can find it online of like different counselors, therapists, people you can talk to. And so just gave someone a chance, knowing full well that like maybe this person won't have the answers for me, maybe they won't be able to help me, but I'm going to go in open to trying. And they left me with some interesting insights. And I still talk to this person every once in a while. I'm actually just finishing up a men's group with them now, where I've been in like a small group of men who like come together once a week just to talk about a variety of things and try to be vulnerable with each other. But one of the two big takeaways is that three big takeaways. Everything is perfect. It's imperfectly perfect. Right now, this moment is perfect. It says, because it is. it is in all of its isness. It couldn't be any other way. And so it is. It's perfect. Now, I can, through my filters, determine that it's not perfect. I'm not 195 pounds of solid lean tissue with a jiu-jitsu black belt capable of leading this country to an age of enlightenment and fruition. But
wow, you're not fucking
not
pussy.
not yet. Yeah.
No, just kidding.
It'll come.
Sorry, you're getting vulnerable. I'll be
Yeah,
a
yeah.
dick.
It's okay. Yeah, please do. I like it. But it is actually perfect right now. It's perfect. And you can, like, if you start to resist that, you're just creating resistance for no reason. I'm always doing my shitty best. And I'm always remembering who I actually am. And so I always try to bring myself back to those three things, and that remembering who you actually are. And I think he only gave me this because I told him as much, that I've had some pretty powerful experiences in my life through some psychedelic experiences of actually feeling that, like, in a tangible way, the oneness of everything, and almost losing sight of where I end and everything begins, and actually feeling that. And so he gave me this other one, this remembering, this self-realization that you are God, you are a part of the divine within you. And it's actually the basis of our whole, like, system of law. Innocent before proven guilty comes from an underlying concept of, like, there is a divine spark within you. You are God. All of this we're in the mind of the divine, and we are manifestations of it. And so whenever you remember that, it can become easy. All of your problems can become a little bit less. It doesn't make them not, shit still sucks, and that's okay. But we're living at some scale of existence that we are essentially God. And you can prove that to yourself. You can, because you're manifesting your life, you're manifesting reality, you're creating. And it becomes a little bit more apparent when you're a parent and you literally watch the act of creation. It can just be difficult to see because we are right now, and we can, like, things seem really significant to us, but, like, at a smaller scale, in your inside of your body right now, your immune system, right? There's cells who are perceiving and interpreting and fighting, and there's a war happening. There's chaos within you right now, this disharmony, this craziness, so that at a greater scale, there's harmony. There's a healthy human being sitting in front of me that isn't, actively dying. But at that smaller scale, there's this disharmony. But then you get to see it in your own life, where at our scale of existence, there's also disharmony. There's wars and atrocities and terrible, terrible things occurring, and they suck. There's no denying it. When someone you love dies or gets hurt, it's terrible. If you punch me in the face, it's going to hurt. I'm not going to be happy about it. But also, probably, I believe, at a greater scale, all of that needs to be happening for the harmonious nature of the universe, for this greater being. It's almost like we are cells within something much larger.
Do you find that can be it can certainly do that. How do you move forward with this idea of, okay, if everything's perfect right now, why should I do anything? What's the point of action?
Because you can make it better, because you're aware that things could get better, because you're aware that things can be worse. It does not ride at a neutral level. Yes, everything is as it is, but you can still recognize that there's, like, things. There are things that aren't good. There are things that could be improved. And so we're trying to create heaven here on earth. And so, yeah, I get what you're saying, by the way. It's an interesting, like, point. But for someone to say, well, then let's just do nothing. It's like, all right, see how that gets you. See where you get with that. Like, why don't you let that play out for a week? See how your kitchen looks. See how your body feels. Why don't you let it play out for a year? Come back to me. Tell me how you feel. You've done nothing. You've sat around. You feeling good? Yeah? Okay, cool. It's like, no, because things fall apart. And we're creators. We're divine beings. We're capable of putting things back together. We're capable of bringing a little bit of order to this chaos. And we should. And we can.
It's interesting. I feel like I got a glimpse of perspective from the way that you answer that in regards to like the way I used to view the idea of everything is perfect was like, okay, there's not that there's not other stuff we need to do, but just this idea of like, well, how can you say that when there's all these terrible things happening? The way you answer that invited in this perspective of everything is exactly where it needs to be according to every decision that mankind has made up to this point. It's perfectly orchestrated. And where you come in the picture is like, okay, now that you know that, you get to influence where this perfection goes.
Mm-hmm.
Do we go closer to heaven or towards hell?
Mm-hmm.
Make your choice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. You know, us spending time basically complaining isn't a fruitful exercise. You know, so describing all the ways that things aren't perfect doesn't really help change it. There is definitely something to identifying a problem. That's like half of the battle, but just complaining about it, like cultivating that victim mindset of like, oh, woe is me. Like I can't, feeling powerless because problems feel too big, and just bitching about them. It's not doing anything good for you or for anything else. And so through radical acceptance, you can come to realize that like you're exactly where you need to be. And from here, you can make conscious steps forward in a direction that aligns more to you. You can start to align your thoughts with your actions, and become an integrated being.
And this seems deeply woven into what we were talking about in regards to like our breath.
Mm-hmm.
If you're living in this, and like, even if you want to articulate that the world isn't perfect, right? Like there's shit we can do to make it better. If you act as though everything that has occurred is perfect, it helps bring you back to that state of peace that we were talking about, where your nervous system isn't activated, where you are calm. So now you can make a calm decision as opposed to, fuck the world, all this terrible shit's happening. Why is all this terrible shit happening? There's bad people in it. Because even if you have the most righteous viewpoint of the entire world, if you're acting from that place of fuck everybody, you're not going to create a virtuous world.
Yeah. Fucking amen. Damn. That's a beautiful tie back. Cause you're exactly right. This like, I can see the appeal of nihilism, like fuck everything. I've gone through that before. But it's not helping.
The black pill.
It's not helping. And do you like, you might say, well, I want to watch the world burn. Everything's shit. So let's let it go to shit. It's like, okay, Satan. Like, sure. That's just realize what you're actually saying. You're now encouraging things to get worse for more people to suffer. And that doesn't have to be the case. Instead, we can try our shitty best to create more of heaven here now. We can bring ourselves into a state of regulation, into a state of calm. And from that place, when I feel good inside, I create goodness outside. I fill my own cup first. Now I'm not selfishly just doing things just for me to benefit no one else. I'm filling my own cup, bringing myself into a state of calm to inner peace as often as I can, so that I am permeating goodness, so that other people then feel good around me and recognize that they can also create goodness around them. And that's kind of what Tub Club is. Like, and that's the point of it for me, is to give people this example, this experience. It's not a theory. You're not reading it and learning it. You're actually experiencing yourself move through this stress to calm. You're giving yourself this example inside yourself of moving from chaos to some order, or at least accepting the chaos as it is and letting it diminish maybe just slightly, but you get to feel that, and that's going to permeate out into the rest of your life. Yeah.
And I bet there's also a parallel here between you and your daughter and her, the chaos that maybe she's bringing into the world just because she has no idea how to operate in this world.
Oh, we're all bringing chaos.
Yeah. And then it's just this ever-growing process of figuring out how you're able to create order within that chaos. Do you see that that's a active piece of being a parent?
A little bit, yeah. I don't know shit about being a parent quite yet. There's some really scary elements of just like, I can't control her life, and so she's gonna have to go through things basically by herself, and I can just support her as best I can, but she will have to go through things and learn them herself, and I can try to help her find a good path. But yeah, she's unlimited potential right now. She is just chaos, a ball of chaos that she can then bring order to take that infinite potential and bring it into, some type of manifested form that creates something here. Whatever that may be. I don't know what that'll be yet. And I'm sure it'll change over time, just as it is for you, just as it is for me. That's the sad story of like the coming of age man, is like, it's really cute to have unlimited potential when you're in your teens or even your early 20s. And it's a lot less cute when you're a 40-year-old and you're still like, well, I could be anything. It's like, okay, well, currently you're not anything.
Yeah, I think there was a saying that I read, which was like, what was it? It was like, you can be anything you want to be, but you can't be everything.
Mm-hmm.
You can be anything you want to be, but you can't be everything that you want to be. No. You can be everything you want to be, but you cannot. You can be anything you want to be, but you can't be everything.
Yeah. And to be totally honest, like, that's one of my main struggles through life. Even now, I have to like constantly just bring myself back to like, okay, how much are you stretching yourself too thin? Like, you're trying to reach out into too many different directions right now. Make a hard decision and sacrifice something. And that's always hard. But it's the game.
I experienced that a lot when I was living in San Diego, Neverland, as I call it. I was stretching myself so thin. I was trying to be a DJ. I was doing jiu-jitsu. I was playing beach volleyball. I had my 9 to 5. I feel like there was something else also in that mix. I was considering starting a podcast back then.
Mm-hmm.
And it's coming back to exactly what you're saying. It's like, how many things can you really put on your plate at a time?
Mm-hmm.
And it's this interesting corollary, because I do believe that there is power in doing that, in having a lot of things on your plate, having different things on your plate.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it gets to a point where you need to realize which things are truly nurturing you and your soul and the bigger picture, as opposed to just, I'm just going to do all these things because they're just fun to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, and I started segmenting it off. It's like, okay, volleyball and jiu-jitsu. I love doing both of them, but which one is maybe more long lasting? And even more so, they're in the same category. And I saw it as the same category of exercise.
Mm-hmm.
So why are you doing each one of these?
Yeah.
Volleyball, it's to hang out with friends and to be around friends. Jiu-jitsu is something you actually purely enjoy. Of course, I had friends in jiu-jitsu.
Sure.
But that was more nurturing to my soul. And so it was like, all right, let's make the trade-off. Invest this energy into jiu-jitsu and watch how much better you can become.
Yeah. And how did that feel after you made that decision and started walking down that path?
I was more energized in other aspects of life. I had more energy to put into other things that I wanted to do. I was more empowered, if you will, into those other things. But I think it was also a very long process. I wasn't very conscientiously making that decision at the time.
Mm-hmm.
It was more something looking back on it, like, I got to stop doing something here.
Mm-hmm.
Something's about to give. I have to pick which one of those things. Because here's the thing. If I don't pick which one gives, they both give.
Yeah.
They both fall out from under you.
Yeah.
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 So it's one of those things where if you don't make a choice, then the world's going to choose for you.
Yeah, it fucking will.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the cool thing about being a person is you get to choose your sacrifice, you know? And you have to for exactly what you just said, or it'll be chosen for you, and it's probably not going to be what you want, or what's optimal for you.
You're sitting here like it's volleyball or jiu-jitsu, and the universe is like, or it could be neither.
Yeah. How about your knees?
Yeah. How about your heart?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Boy.
Yeah. It'll take you some. It'll take the life out of you, if you will.
Yeah.
Oh, I still want to find the name of the special powers.
Oh yeah, the rishi.
A rishi
the people who are the practitioners, aren't they?
Yeah, so like here it says a rishi is a sage or a seer who is semi-divine, being gifted with insight, sacred knowledge, and special powers. Most famous are the 7 rishis, the Brahmins, to whom the Vedas were revealed. This is all Hindu stuff. The Vedas are like the most ancient text, I believe, of theirs. I might be wrong on that, so don't quote me. The entire corpus of sacred texts. Oh, wait, it had it right here. The entire corpus of sacred text, beginning with the Rig Veda, was orally passed on to humans, and even today is recited by Vaidika Brahmins, who considered the original 7 as role models. Both the idea of the 7 and several individualists were called rishis, and known in the Rig Veda and Atharva Veda. But the general accepted list of 7 names did not occur until centuries after in the Brihamaranyaka Upanishad and the Sutras. But I want to know the name of the special powers. Is it Siddhis? Here it is. Miraculous feats. Siddhis. Siddhis? Yeah. Ooh, we found it. All right. The signal features of the Rishi were the gift of spiritual insight and his conduct of extraordinary asceticism. By means of tapas, powerful austerities, the rishi attained superhuman status, rivaling the gods. Miraculous feats, siddhis, were accomplished, including the ability to change shape, become invisible, or fly through the air. Various siddhis and the role of rishi continued to be important later in tradition of yoga, Buddhism, and Jainism. By the 7th century, the Upanishads directed spiritual insight and power, like sacrifice. Because, dude, in that book, in Autobiography of a Yogi, there's parts where he talks about how his guru would physically manifest in front of him out of nowhere. And his guru would be sitting there like, hey, I'm going to be late. I'd be like you, like he'd be like, hey, I'm gonna be late on this train, and blah 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 blah. And Paramahansa sitting there like, this isn't you. He's like, yeah, touch my hand, it's me. And so like, he would touch his hand, and he'd be like, dude, this is you. He's like, yeah. Now, blah blah blah. And he's like, how do I actually know this is you? He's like, well, whenever I get off the train, there's gonna be this, and this. And then he like goes through, gets to the train at the right time, and like, because he was like on the wrong train or something. And so then he goes to the other train, and then all those fucking things happen. And he's like, oh, you got my message. And he's like, yeah, you were fucking talking to me. Like, you were floating in midair.
Yeah.
Dude, it is a crazy... And that's only like one of the fucking things in there.
Yeah. And again, it's very easy to dismiss these things, but we don't fucking know. There are stories of astral projection throughout history, let alone, some of these other abilities. And we don't live in a society that is exploring the inner world. And if we were, I think we would feel a lot different about some of these abilities. And it would be really curious to spend the next 100 years of our existence really exploring the inner world, really seeing what happens in a society that promotes health and promotes inner growth. If we were learning how to truly meditate, if you will, how to create relaxation in schools, and teaching people how to sit with themselves and how to let go of things that are weighing them down, how to forgive themselves, how to get to the deepest levels of their being, who knows what we could unlock.
The way I see it, man, is that our generation is the generation that is going to be taking out's a strong word, but at least starting to implement those things.
Yeah.
Really bring deeper awareness to it, more transform Western culture into that. I see it as a potential, I guess I should say. It's really up to us at an
Mm-hmm.
individual level. If I'm going to do the work, if you're going to do the work,
Mm-hmm.
listeners of the podcast, if you're going to do the work, so it really, in my opinion, is going to be, it's our choice, but I see that as like, that's our big feat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's happening. There's a great awakening happening right now. You see it just like I get to see it. I have the honor of seeing it with like the attendance of Tub Club, you know.
Which is nuts,
Yeah,
dude.
how weird of a thing it is to come and like do breath work and like be around people, a lot of people you don't know, and to sit in ice water just objectively like, what the fuck is wrong with you? You're
Dude, we're
just gonna
up to
sit.
3 tubs, the barrel, and a mega tub.
Yeah,
Remember when it was just one?
yeah, yeah. I know. Um, but so there is this great awakening happening. There are a lot of people who are starting to feel their own power to create a better world, and are recognizing that a lot of the systems that are in place, aren't serving them or the people that they love. Um,
Hmm.
and so the more that people can start to master themselves and start to build a good relationship with themselves, the better they start to build relationships with their community, their family, their friends. And then we start to create heaven on earth because we're starting to do things that are impactful and powerful for our own health and well-being, rather than like hating our neighbors and shaming our neighbors and thinking that our neighbor is the enemy. uh, and there seems to be two maybe more, but it seems to be two separate occurrences happening where there's a portion of the population that are willingly putting their heads further down into the sand to fortify their trust in organizations that aren't serving them, that don't care about them. And there's another swath that are starting to poke their heads up and starting to see that they're in Plato's cave, if you will, that so much of it is an illusion, and that as they emerge into the sunlight, there is abundance all around them, that they can feel love. But again, those are scary things because once you feel love, you feel it can be taken from you.
Yeah, that's a tricky piece of it too.
Yeah.
Once you have something, it can be taken away or it can be disappeared or
Mm-hmm.
transformed into something else.
Yeah. And then you have to grapple with that fear, because that fear can control you if you're not careful.
Any fear. I mean, and I think that's a huge thing that Tub Club promotes, or just even getting into an ice bath in
Mm-hmm.
general promotes, which is being able to wrestle with fear.
Yeah, that's right. Every single time you're proving something to yourself, and you're proving it at a cellular level. You're proving it at this innermost level because you're overcoming something. You're transcending suffering, basically.
You're transcending suffering. You are communicating to yourself that I'm greater than this,
Mm-hmm.
or at least that this isn't something I need to fear.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay to suffer.
Yeah, there's more of you than the suffering that you will face. It can be easy to feel like, oh, little old me, like, and I'm kind of a littler guy. I've been afraid of the cold my whole life. Getting into ice water was one of the more terrifying things, one of the bigger struggles that I've done. I used to interpret, I had this misinterpretation, but it was real for me. When I would, I told you I dealt with a lot of social anxiety, and that was amplified if it was cold out. If I was cold at all, even inside of a building, if I was cold, I would feel a little shivery and I would feel a little uncomfortable. And then inside me, the interpretation through my nervous system then told me that I was uncomfortable, which told me that I was anxious, which told me I was out of place, which told me I didn't fit in, which told me all of these unhelpful things. And so just starting to change that conversation and proving to myself time and time again that I'm okay, you start to feel okay in more and more situations. Yeah, it's just been a cool, like, getting rid of weakness, grow, as Fungi would say.
It is interesting how there's that, you can have that feedback from the world and then it causes you to spiral or have certain thoughts. Oh, I'm physically cold. It's not like And then your mind starts going to the fact that I'm weird and nobody likes me.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, just because it's cold outside.
Yeah. The spiral, the
Yeah.
cascading, like unhelpful thoughts, just going crazy. I can actually understand psychosis to a degree, like of just how consumed you can become, like in your own shit.
Man, that's a big thing I talk to people a lot about on this podcast is the difference between like crazy, like how do you know you're not crazy?
Yeah. You should get a partner. I think that's actually in a big way. I think that's the point of marriage, or at least partnership, because you can't. It's very. I think it's very. Maybe you can't. Maybe can't is too strong of a word, but I think it's very difficult to know that you're not crazy by yourself. And so finding a partner can give you this confirmation that you're not crazy, or at least even if you are, because I think maybe we all are a little bit crazy, right? Like sanity comes about from community. It comes about from that union of two. And as long as your weaknesses don't like exponentially exacerbate each other, it's likely that you will, as a union, be like a single sane thing.
Or you at least have somebody to test your craziness with.
Yeah.
Before acting it out in the world.
Like, hey, is this too off the wall? Like, ideally, a marriage or a partner is someone that will be truthful with you, right? Which can suck sometimes.
A little too truthful.
Wonderfully truthful. I love you all that. You're so perfectly direct.
Oh, that's too funny.
But
but I think that's a beautiful way to view it, because I'm still grappling with the idea of marriage. I have a pretty good idea that I will at some point, but I don't, who knows at the biggest level. But I do always think that's important. The why. Why do we have these things? I think there's a huge element of the culture and society today that just wants to uproot everything, get rid of it, because it's all old and the people are old who put it in place. So what do they know? They know nothing. I know everything. I've been alive for 20, 25 years.
Totally.
They were, fuck no. They didn't know what they were talking about. Yeah. I know what I'm talking about. And so I think it's always very beneficial to identify what the why is.
Yeah.
Why does this exist? Why was it put into existence in the first place? And then once you identify what that why is, then you can judge whether or not the entire thing that was created from that why is valid.
Yeah, it's the phrase throwing the baby out with the bathwater. It's like, okay, maybe the bathwater is pretty filthy and you need to get rid of the bathwater, but like, don't throw the baby out the window too.
Yeah.
That's what I think is it postmodernism. It's like this kind of Marxist ideal. Like, it's exactly what you were just saying.
I've heard about it, but
there's a term for it. I think it's postmodernism, which is essentially just like, I know everything because I'm here now, and all of these traditions and all of these like things that have been passed down are worthless, and they're all rooted in something bad. We're going to call them racist. We're going to call them sexist. We're going to call them transphobic. We're going to call them whatever we need to call them so that we identify them as bad. And it's like, whoa. Now, I just had an example, actually, of this, like a tradition that I don't want to embody for my family, which is, the circumcision. Maybe there is a point that someone like arrived at and why that's been handed down, but I don't think that that's a good idea. So that's me breaking away from tradition to I'm playing devil's advocate on myself right now. I'm breaking away from tradition because I don't think that that's a good idea, just based on my own interpretation of the world as it stands right now. However, to throw everything out isn't helpful either. To think that I can reinvent the wheel isn't going to give me a good wheel. I'm making life much harder for myself.
Yeah, something that just came to me. I pulled up the definition of postmodernism. We'll get to that in a second. But since you brought up the circumcision, an idea that just came to me, and I'll see how you feel about this, is that a reason for it, right? We were talking about how it makes sex less pleasurable. There could be utility in that, in the sense that we don't get lost in our primal instincts of sex for fun. because that's a huge learning curve. I've shared this so many times on the podcast. That was a huge learning curve in my life, that mindless one night stand sex it's difficult to obtain, but it doesn't mean that it's valuable.
Wow, what a great point.
And I got that from Joe Rogan and Chris Williamson. Shout out to those guys. Come on the podcast if you're listening. But it was one of those things that I realized, it took me a little bit, but had sex been even more pleasurable,
Oh yeah, right.
would I have
You could
figured it
become
out
addicted.
sooner? Would I have become addicted? Which is a great point, right? So if I'm playing devil's advocate when it comes to circumcision, I don't know. The question is, would I have figured that out quicker, or would I have found myself into the addiction had it been more pleasurable?
Yeah. And then, from the individual level, what does that look like across society? Are more people, we don't know, but would more people become too primally addicted to sex, if you will? But I disagree with that. I think, you can learn to manage yourself and regulate yourself. I mean, there's lots of things that feel amazing out here that we have to grapple with at all times.
Sugar,
Yeah, right.
cocaine,
Oh my God.
heroin.
Sugar being like a huge one, just to not eat shit all the time. I mean, there's experts who have designed food to be maximally addictive. And you have to contend with that in this modern world.
And even more so, I mean, it could increase if you have that heightened pleasure perception, it could increase your power at some level, because if it's more powerful, then there could be a level of increased, if it's more pleasurable, it could increase your power. If it's more pleasurable, you have an increased sense of sexual energy within you. If you have an increased level of sexual energy within you, it gives you more energy to control. If you're more able to control it, then you can be a greater force in the world. This is a completely hypothetical that I'm just thinking about.
No, but yeah, it's an interesting point nonetheless. Yeah.
Let's get some studies done on that.
Yeah.
Somebody study that.
Some long-term, sex pleasure versus achievement type. I don't know.
I do know. I do know the more that I have regulated my sex pleasure, that more I have achieved physically, whether it's in the gym, whether it's with my podcast, whether it's with self-discipline, whether it's with meditating. I know for sure that there's a testament to the idea of withholding sex and even ejaculation for that matter, and being able to manifest in the world. And I think this even probably ties back to Christian doctrines and probably others of no sex until marriage, because it teaches you. And again, I'm not, do whatever you guys want. I think that whenever you are able to achieve that level of self-mastery, you're mastering your internal energies. And I think if you're able to do that, there's nothing more powerful in the world. That's all you're able to teleport. That's all you're able to fly. That's all you can create things out of midair. And I think mind control is even a thing that's in the book. You have to go read the Autobiography of a Yogi. But you can't do that if you're out of control with your energies.
Yeah.
If your energies are scattered to the wind, it's then you're nothing. You're as weak as can come.
Yeah.
There's nothing for us to grapple with here. We can't interact. I might actually be afraid to interact with you because I have no clue what you're going to do. It's like a wild animal. It's just going to be on whatever energy flows in their body they're going to act upon.
Yeah.
Whatever God takes them over, this is going to be their, to go back to the Romans at the beginning of this podcast.
Yeah. Whatever idea, whatever feeling takes them over becomes their truth. And how dare you question their truth, their current in the moment truth.
Which brings us back to the postmodernism. Let me read this so we're all on the same page. And I think you were pretty close to what it was with your description. Postmodernism is an intellectual stance or mode of discourse characterized by skepticism towards the, quote, grand narrative, quote, grand narratives, end quote, of modernism, rejection of epistic certainty or stability of meaning. Oh, that's dangerous. And sensitivity to the role of ideology in maintaining political power. Claims to objectivity are dismissed as naive realism, with attention drawn to the conditional nature of knowledge claims within particular historical, political, and cultural discourses. The postmodern outlook is characterized by refernatality, refernatality,
Self-referential.
self-referentiality. Nice, nice. I don't think I've ever seen that word written before. Epistemological relativism, moral relativism, pluralism, irony. What the fuck? So basically, yeah, it's basically saying that we can't take anything as a truth because it is all predicated on something that's occurred before.
Mm-hmm.
That's a wild way to think.
Yeah. To give, for whatever reason, I always feel like it's necessary to give some credit to ideas before I go after them. But like, yeah, we don't know where a lot of ideas come from in the modern world that we live in. And we're all just living through filters from like experience and knowledge handed down to us. And a lot of it could be wrong. A lot of it could be not serving us well. And so we have to be careful, again, not to throw the baby out with the bathwater, but to clean the bath. And so in that lens, I think it's appropriate to be skeptical and to question these like truths, these traditions that are handed down to us, but also like we're fucking here right now in a society that's functioning. There's been a functioning society before us, and that's not as common as I think we like to believe. Like the basic state of human existence has been like there's really powerful people who have enslaved many, many others. And that's what it will slip back into if we're not careful. If we start to throw the baby out with the bathwater, we will be throwing away our freedom because freedom is hard. It's scary to be personally free. The weight of the world falls upon you and it's heavy. And people just they don't want that. They want to be comfortable. They want to have this illusion of comfort. And so they rest in this illusion and let daddy take care of them because it's hard. But then their lives suffer for it.
They suffer more big picture, long term. And I think, what's sticking out to me here, as you were even talking there, is like we need a foundation to stand on.
Yeah.
Like we need something concrete to agree upon.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like we got to have some sort of social construct between us. Like otherwise nothing works.
Mm-hmm.
If everything's just chaotic energy, there's no way for us to interact. So at some level, right? Like we need a foundation. The issue I'm seeing with postmodernism, at least this description, is that they're saying, no, completely get rid of that foundation.
Yeah.
Because it's all wrong. And I think the more accurate way is like, okay, let's realize there's a foundation and let's take the piece of postmodernism that says, okay, let's examine the foundation. Where in the foundation are the whys for the pillars that we've erected in society? And let's look at the reason that we have erected such pillars. Maybe there's some pillars we can change. Maybe there's some we have to completely get rid of. Maybe there's some that could be replaced. Maybe there's some that we put too many in one area of the foundation. But yeah, man, I think it's very dangerous if we want to go to a place of, okay, every moment before this moment right now doesn't matter.
Yeah. Nothing means anything. Good luck.
How would you even orientate yourself in the world? You just become a slave to energy.
Yeah, and to influence.
Yeah, and whoever can be the most charismatic person. Right? Would it be that?
I mean, yeah, if you don't have a foundation to stand on, you're looking for one. Like, it's like everyone's religious. Some people know they're religious and some people don't, but everyone's religious. Everyone acts according to some belief system inside, and your actions are your beliefs. And it's like, well, why are you making those actions? Do you know? Like, do you know the ideology you're following? And, once you become aware of that, to bring it back to that inner feeling of awareness, like, is that in line with what matters to you? Does it make you feel weak? Does it make you feel lesser? Does it make you feel out of sorts? Do you even know what it feels like not to feel weak? And have you made a decision that's made you feel stronger? And can you make more of those decisions and grow from that foundation? Because you're just going to like wreck a foundation and have nothing to stand on. And then you'll stand on anything that anyone gives you that just sounds good, or if they say it enthusiastically enough, you know.
Or you're even, or if you even have an orientation towards short-term pleasure over long-term pleasure.
Oh yeah, well
Yeah, you
that's the
can eat
big one,
whatever
right?
food you want. I'll take
Totally.
care of your medical bills. I'll
Yeah.
do it for you. Oh, okay, cool. Like the short-term pleasure on that is through the roof.
Mm-hmm.
Scale it out over 10 years, you're fucked.
Mm-hmm.
You're fucked. And even, what was I thinking about? Oh, going back to that religious piece you were talking about, Paramahansa has a book called The Purpose of Religion, I think, or the scientific purpose, oh, something like the scientific purpose of religion. And in a simple way, he says that the religion is essentially our pursuit to get away from suffering and obtain bliss. Now, I'm not saying all religions do it perfectly,
I like that.
but I think that's the core concept. That's the foundation that religion is built upon.
Mm-hmm.
Is how do we limit the suffering in our life and invite in more bliss?
Mm-hmm.
What do you need to do? Well, Christian said, look at the 10 Commandments.
Mm-hmm.
Don't lie, don't cheat, don't steal, don't kill. You know, I don't have them all memorized, but you follow these things. Patanjali has the yamas and niyamas,
Mm-hmm.
which I try to follow to the much of my accord. And what I always tell people is like, man, like if you're struggling to meditate, start adopting like the 10 Commandments. Start following like the yamas and niyamas,
Mm-hmm.
because this is how you get into deeper places of meditation. Is stop doing shit that causes you distress. Stop doing shit that like makes you jittery, or shit that you have to contemplate or think about whenever you are in a space of calmness. Because that's, in my opinion, that's the easiest place to become calm. Stop doing stuff that makes you uncalm.
Yeah, stop doing stuff that makes you feel lesser, that makes you feel weak, which is harder, strangely harder than it sounds. You know, using cannabis as an example, I used to smoke sometimes before, like, going to some events, and it's like, it was never a good idea. It does not make me more articulate. It does not help me connect better. Um, and yet I would still do it. And you know, you do it in this weird, like, self-betraying way. And there would be this element to it that would be like, after doing it, oh no, what have I done? And then, you know, and then well, you're in it now, and you got to run with it. And for some reason, that one time isn't enough. And you have to, you know, really take some time to learn that lesson, and hopefully learn that lesson, because there's definitely people who don't learn that lesson. And I'm still learning that lesson in various ways through my life with different tools, different substances, you know, even coffee. You know, like, if you're heavily caffeinated all the time, like, is that serving you? You know, if you're drinking an energy drink at 6 p.m. to get through the rest of your shift, and you need to go to bed at 9:30, like, you're making yourself less. You're sacrificing your long-term health for a short-term outcome that, yeah, it, you know, maybe you need it right now, but it probably would be better to suffer through, to embody this necessary suffering, and let yourself get better sleep so you feel more rested the next day.
Yeah, there was a girl I had on Odyssey. I just talked about her, Odyssey number 84 with Caroline Gutierrez, and her favorite quote is that you are the medicine. And it ties back to what you're saying with Om. It ties into this conversation right
Yeah.
here,
Wow.
where you're giving your power away to cannabis, to Advil, to Aleve, versus you are the medicine. You have all of those potential remedies within you. You might not know the tools, and that's a whole nother process in itself, finding the tools, finding someone to give you the tools. But you have all the tools within you.
Yeah, you heal from the inside. You know, the drugs that you're given in a hospital don't heal you. They might alleviate pain, they might quell symptoms, which maybe give you an opportunity to better, like, heal faster, or to just be in a place of calm if you can't bring yourself to that place of calm if the symptoms are too great. But you are the one that heals. You know, oh, I read this good book, Becoming Animal, fairly recently, that gave a description of a shaman who they tied in, like, magicians to shamanic practices, like sleight of hand, and how, like, some medicine men, shamans, will use sleight of hand in healing rituals. So they used an example of a woman who was suffering and, had some type of sickness. Something was going on with her. She lived in a village and, she was really down bad. And, he went and he performed this like ritual around her. And at one point during the ritual, he appears to like be touching her body. And then as he pulls his hand away, there's like this bleeding, dark mass that's in his hand, and it's done deliberately for her to kind of catch it and see that he's pulled something from her. Now it's likely just like, a part of an animal that he brought and had on his person, and he's using sleight of hand. He's using this illusion to show that he's removed this thing from her so that then she believes that the sickness has been taken from her and she starts to get better because she believes that she's going to get better. She believes that something has been removed from her and that healing happens from within because she is her own medicine. And you can also be your own poison. If you start to really believe that you are not well, you're not well, and you're not going to be well. But if you start to believe that you are healing, guess what? You're going to heal. It's a really significant percentage of what happens is your belief of it. And that's the placebo effect. And we just call it this thing, the placebo effect, which totally weakens what that actually is, like your ability to believe something and make it real, taking a sugar pill and having your disease go away because you thought that you were taking something that would make it go away. Like it just demonstrates the true power within you to heal. You start to believe something and your cells work for you.
How does this, it feels like this touches into postmodernism then, of this idea that if I believe that this thing is true, then it's true.
But it's not everything. There's still concrete reality. Maybe these rishis can fly, but if you go and you jump off the roof of your house, I just don't think it's going to happen for you.
Gonna hit the cement pretty hard.
I don't know what level you need to create inner calm and find equanimity and release from material attachments to make that occur. But it's likely not right now, no matter how strongly you tell yourself you believe it. How much of it is you telling yourself you believe something versus actually believing something? That even gets to like, what is belief? Because people say they believe something, but in my experience and what I have come to know as true is beliefs are how you act in the world. It's not what you say. You can say a whole bunch of bullshit. You can say a whole bunch of beautifully sounding words that say how good of a person or whatever you are, but how are you acting? That's your belief. What are you actually doing? That's your belief. You demonstrate your belief through actions.
And I know that you said something important there, which is like your release of material desires.
Oh yeah, just like, the tangent of like, well, I'm thinking from the lens of like deep meditation practices, like just trying to entertain what it would take to let yourself actually float into the air, to be so unattached that that gravity no longer has the same effect on you, I guess. I don't know. It seems pretty objective from where I sit.
I do think that there's a corollary there. And I know I've experienced this a lot in terms of where the root of suffering lies. And to me, it usually lies in material pursuits.
Mm-hmm.
Getting with that next girl, having more money, trying to please another person, trying to obtain a certain benchmark for your podcast or certain numbers. That pursuit of material items. I wonder if there's an underlying connection here with postmodernism, because if you want to sit here and say that this moment is no longer representative The ideas that we are constructing in this moment are not valid because of everything that has ever happened in the past. Because it came from someone who's in the past and they're not living in this moment, therefore it's not legitimate. I wonder if subconsciously there's some sort of attachment to the material world that is acting through that thought process. Because if you weren't attached to the material world, you would not, in essence, care that the foundation that our society is predicated upon would have. You wouldn't care that the foundation that our society is predicated upon would have been from what people had said in the past. I'm playing with a new idea here.
Yeah, and I'm trying to let it resonate. Sometimes you gotta let something marinate for a moment. Excuse our silence.
Let it meditate for you too. Marinate. Like a nice steak.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a tough one. I'm probably gonna let myself think about that through the rest of the day. It gets silly though. Like, I remember an animated show I really loved actually, that touched on this really well. It was Avatar: The Last Airbender, the original. Probably one of the best animes in the world.
Legendary, dude.
Period.
Legendary.
And at one point, the Avatar Aang, he is working through his like energy centers, his chakras with a guru, and he arrives at this last one, which is like the cosmic energy, and he needs to relinquish all attachment to the world in order to achieve this like perfect state of empowerment. But in that, he has to relinquish his love for someone that he now loves. He has to let that go. He can't be attached to it because, in that attachment is suffering. And this is talked about through, scriptures and through Buddhism and such. Like what you just said, our attachment to things does create suffering. However, and I guess this is like me talking it out loud. Obviously, like what the fuck do I know? By the way, guys, I'm just a 33-year-old man who's still figuring this shit out as I go. But like, goddamn, the most beautiful things in my life are things that I'm attached to. The love for my wife and children, the freedom that I get from the country that I have been born in. I'm attached to these things, and they have given me some of the richest sources of pleasure. And granted, they also give me some of the most, the greatest sources of potential pain and anxiety too. But without any of that, would it all just be bland? Would there be nothing? I don't know. Do you then transcend? Like if you relinquish all attachment and you transcend that suffering, does it open itself back up to you? I don't know. Can you get yourself to essentially a higher plane that then you can freely choose to attach yourself if you want, and you get it back if you will? Is that heaven? Is that the bliss that we seek? I don't know.
It's all good questions. I feel like all you can do is really try. I've just noticed that, taking the approach of if I put it all in faith and trust and everything's going to happen for the best, it seems that it does.
Mm-hmm.
There's There's a story. I want to see if I can pull this up.
It's interesting too, because as you say that, right? If I basically put my best foot forward, only the best thing will happen. That's you shaping your perspective, right? And so then you will perceive the goodness that comes, or that makes itself available after you've done this thing. Whereas if you're looking for the bad, if you're looking for the negative outcomes, that's what you're going to see too.
Yeah, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Mm-hmm. It's all perspective. You can open yourself up to a new perspective, and then your literal world changes. Bringing it back to like regulating your nervous system. When you are in a more of a sympathetic or a fight or flight state, what you're actually seeing with your eyes, what you're hearing with your ears changes versus when you're in a more relaxed state.
So true. I really want to find this story because it's so good. I'll try to remember it. It's something along the lines of like a guy was born and he went through life and he was unhappy because he didn't have a wife. So whenever he died, he talked to God and was like, hey, you know, in the next life, I want to have a wife. Like the past life, I didn't have one. I want a
Good luck,
wife.
buddy.
So he becomes incarnated again and goes through life, has a wife, and then like on their honeymoon or something, she dies. And then he dies eventually, gets to heaven. He's like, God, what the fuck, dude? Like, I wanted a wife to actually like live with me and like have a full life with. And he was like, okay. So then he gets reincarnated again, has a wife. They have a full life together, but he realizes that they can't get pregnant or have kids. So then he ends up dying, goes back to God, and God's like, what's wrong now? He's like, you know, I had the wife and it was great, but like we wanted kids and we couldn't have any kids. So God's like, all right, go do it again. And so then he gets born again, he gets married, has a kid dies in childbirth, and then the cycle repeats. And it's like this story that goes on and on and on about how you keep having these desires of, okay, well, it wasn't exactly how I wanted it this time. Oh, it wasn't exactly how I wanted it this time. Let's go again. Let's do it again. And that story to me really pulled back this idea of like examining the desire that you want, because you never really know all of the strings that will come attached to it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Oh, I want a video to go super viral and get 4 million views. Okay, well, are you ready for all the nasty comments where they're going to call you an idiot?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you didn't want that part? Well, why didn't you specify that?
Yeah.
Specify that. And then you're like, okay, fine. Well, this time I want 4 million, but no one's like calling me names. And then so you get something else. But then there's like another little element of it that you don't exactly like. And so you play this endless game with yourself. That's just a never ending circle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's a really interesting point. You know, you don't know what you want. And your expectations, like, you can really suffer through them.
Yeah. We're at 3 hours.
Oh, that flew.
Right?
Well, yeah, thank you. This has been wonderful.
Thank you for coming, man. Breaking in the studio.
Yeah. Good luck as you continue down this path and, you know, talking through things that are giving you that deeper sense of fulfillment and aligning with yourself.
Well, I know this conversation did.
Yeah, same for me.
Do you have anything you want to say to the guests, or not the guest, you're the guest, the audience, or encouragement, last words of encouragement, anything you want to plug? I'll throw your links down in the description.
Yeah, I mean, you can find me on Instagram right now, tyler.being and pittsburghtub.club. Check us out. And if you're in the area, if you're within the Pittsburgh area, please come through to one of our events on Wednesday night. We would love to have you. It's really important that every single person that hears this take it upon themselves to start addressing the discomfort that they face in their lives and connecting with themselves first. Let go of your grip of whatever you're identifying with, and instead sit with yourself in the angst, sit with yourself in the discomfort. Give yourself that stillness. Let yourself connect back to your intuition. And as you start to make action that aligns with you, and I'm speaking from direct experience, it has been an amazing last couple of years, taking steps in a direction that actually matter for me, of how unbelievable connections have just opened up, even as much as just being on this podcast right now. You know, this wouldn't have happened if I kept the career that I was in, and I would maybe be financially more stable and soul empty. So
That makes 2 of us, man.
yeah, take it upon yourself, connect with yourself first. You heal from the inside.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Well, Conscious Monkeys, you heard it here first. Thank you so much for listening, guys. And as always, I will, if you don't come to Tub Club, which you should, honestly, I should like just fly out to come visit Tub Club. Buy a plane ticket. If you don't buy a plane ticket, that's totally cool, because I know that we will run into each other in the 6th dimension.